Can we come to order, please? It is June 8th, 2026. Welcome everyone and folks dialing in to the June 8th Town Council meeting. Thanks everyone. First order of business is recognizing and welcoming our newest council member, Erica Selly. I had the pleasure of swearing Erica in last week, right? Was it 2 weeks ago? Last week? In the town office, along with town manager Barb Matthews, after the town council voted unanimously on May 27th to have her serve with us. Erica was formerly on the Parks Advisory Committee in town. She is a patent attorney by trade, and I believe we will benefit immensely from her common sense approach as we work through a number of projects and other town situations over the next year. So welcome, Erica. Moving right along, the next order of business will be approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve and adopt the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of tonight's agenda is unanimous. Next order of business is approval of the consent agenda, which consists of two parts. The first is approval of the May 11th, 2026 Town Council meeting minutes, as well as a mayoral appointment for the Arboretum Committee. I will entertain a motion at this time to adopt the meeting minutes from May 11th. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of the minutes is unanimous. Next, I will entertain a motion to appoint Charlie Andrews to the Arboretum Committee with a term of service ending in June 2031. For the record, Charlie served on the Arboretum Committee previously, and he continues to maintain the online town tree map, and his appointment was enthusiastically supported by Councilmember Bennett, our liaison to this committee. Do I hear a motion to approve Mr. Andrews' appointment?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, approval of the appointment is unanimous. Moving at light speed here. Next order of business will be presentation by residents. Are there any residents who'd like to present to the council this evening? Step right up. Let us know your name and your address, please.
Hi, I'm Jim Cole. I'm at 11024 Rokeby, and I have some concerns about the driveway apron issue that's been talked about lately. 4 concerns I'll cover in 4 minutes. The first concern is the size. I know that the Montgomery County requirement is to go from the curb to 5 feet back at 7 inches deep. But I'm under the impression that the main reason we're talking about this is to protect the ends of driveways from the plows. And I'm wondering if 5 feet of concrete is really necessary to do that, or whether a smaller apron, 6, 8, or 12 inches, would provide that protection. That brings me to my second concern, which is cost. I talked to Roy Alameda. He's a contractor specializing in driveways, walkways, and steps. And Roy has poured a lot of concrete right here in Garrett Park. I asked him to estimate the cost of tearing out the last 5 feet of an asphalt driveway, 1 car wide, and replacing it with concrete. And he said $3,000 to $4,000. So if you're redoing your whole driveway, that's not a big hit. I'm concerned about projects, let's call them bubble projects. I have a chunk of driveway that's gotten knocked up by tree roots. The guy's going to come out and dig it up and repave it for me for $3,000. If that triggers the need for me to put an apron in for another $3,000 to $4,000, that's an awfully big hit. That brings me to my third concern, which is the decision-making process on whether an apron is required or not. It's my understanding that the town manager will make the decision on a case-by-case basis. And I have complete faith in Barbara's decision-making and her fairness and even-handedness, but I would still like to see the criteria quantified and in a document so that if I'm thinking about working on my driveway, I can download that document and figure out which of three buckets I'm in. The bucket that says you're going to have to do an apron, bucket says you're probably not going to have to do an apron, or this bubble bucket with maybe yes, maybe no. And if I'm in that bucket, maybe I want to scale back the work I'm doing and only fix the real big problems so that I'm now in the bucket that says you're not going to have to spend $3,000 or $4,000 on an apron. And if I'm in the bucket that says you're going to have to do an apron, maybe that leads me to focus my efforts on finding a contractor, on somebody who can do both the asphalt and the concrete. So I'm just dealing with one contractor and I avoid the nightmare scenario. And I actually would have this nightmare that they both show up on the same day with their crews and equipment. That would really be a nightmare. My last point is that I wonder for these decisions on the bubble, if it might be helpful to have an appeal process. Especially if it's just one person making the decision. If I'm told I have to do an apron and I think, I'm really not doing that much to my driveway, I don't think that's fair. If there's a process where I can stand up for 5 minutes and make my case, and somebody on the staff stands up and explains their decision making on my permit, and a panel of 2 or 3 people, say one council member and 2 residents, debates it for 5 or 10 minutes and decides yes or no and explains their decision, even if I lose that appeal, I'm going to feel so much better about the process than if all I'm told is, well, it was decided you need to do an apron and you just have no recourse on that. I think also that there wouldn't be that many appeals and each appeal wouldn't take very long. So we're not talking about a big new thing the town government has to do. And would also serve as feedback. If you get a lot of appeals, maybe that tells the town council, gee, maybe we need to look again at the criteria, or maybe the criteria are okay, but we need to do a better job of going over them with people at the beginning of the process so they're not shocked later on when they're told they need an apron. So those are my 4 concerns. And it could be that I have offered absolutely nothing new in the last 4 minutes, that all of these have come up and been talked about, in which case, great. But if I have raised any new issues, I trust that the town council and the mayor and the staff will, consider them appropriately before they make any decisions on this apron situation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
That's how it's done.
4 points in 4 minutes.
how it's
That
done.
is phenomenal. That's beyond light speed. Well, Jim, you'll be happy to know that we are going to address that very issue in unfinished business. And if I defer to Barb's predictive analysis here, that should be around 8:20 tonight. But we are going to walk through that. But all your points are well taken. Appreciate you.
Actually had a couple I was going to say myself.
Next order of business is,
Whoa.
oh, sorry. Please state your name, sir, and your address for the record. Thank you.
Ken Schwartz, 10919 Claremont Avenue, not giving you comments as I represent the Bugle, but rather individually. It's going to be very short, shorter even than Jim's, and it's not about electronic voting. Later in the meeting, the council will decide whether to go into recess in either July or August. I suggest that the council recess in July, not August. Why? Because according to the documents provided prior to this meeting, the Wiedemann construction document should be provided to the council by August 1. Therefore, if you go into recess in August, the council will not have an opportunity to move forward on town hall renovation until the September 14 council meeting. Since time is money, in this case, inflation, it seems to me that it would be a shame for the council to delay consideration of next steps by a month and a half. I thank you for your consideration. I think you'll agree this was short.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. We're actually going to talk that through right now, but your point is very well taken, because I think that you're absolutely right. Is we'll walk through just in a second here. Timing is important for us, so Ken, I appreciate that. We're actually going to talk through the summer recess, but it's going to be a little bit later. Probably 8:25, 8:30, but pretty straightforward. But thank you both. Appreciate it. Next order of business is the authorization of change order number 1 from Wiedemann Architects. Greg Wiedemann is on the line with us now. I had a chance to connect with each of the council members over the weekend. Jerry Lee, I know you and I played some phone tag, but I think we were clear. Greg has joined us, as I mentioned, this evening to add any needed color, but essentially the increase reflects an extension of the construction documents phase. This is, of our respective town hall project. That extension was from the end of May, which was originally estimated, to the 1st of August. Certainly it's more nuanced than that, but just to give a high level, Barb, I don't know if you had any thoughts. And Greg, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, thank you for your back and forth and your open line of communication that we've established. I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Barb, do you want to take us through the change order? I'm happy to do it as well, but
Either way, yes. So most of you were a part of this decision-making. So we awarded the contract to Wiedemann Architects for the construction documents phase in December of 2025. As noted in Mr. Wiedemann's proposed change order, he was always very forthright that he expected this phase to last roughly 6 months. Suffice to say that has not transpired, and we're about 2 months delayed at this point for a variety of factors, none of which were within the architect's control. So Mr. Wiedemann is requesting change order 1 to the construction documents phase contract. The net impact of that additional 2 months delay is $38,273.40. This represents both additional compensation to Wiedemann Architects as well as one of their subconsultants, AJ Engineers. AJ Engineers, as a reminder, is the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing subconsultant. Greg, is there anything that I should have hit on that I did not?
Well, that was very succinct. I'm here to expand on things or answer any questions.
I have a question. So did your staff and the engineer actually spend time working on the project and the delay over 2 months? Were there hours expended that cost you salary money to?
Yes. By the end of May, we had overspent our fee by about $23,000. And there are still a number of issues that need to be resolved and decided upon. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
So you went over your fee in May, and then this extension, was there additional hours, professional hours spent in the additional time? That's my question.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely, yes.
I have some follow-on questions. So first, you said that by the end of May, you'd gone over by about 23,000. Isn't that about the amount that we are considering for the change order? Or is it about 38,000?
38.
I opened the wrong document. 38. Okay, so do we have a firm estimate of what decisions need to be made, and that those hours for the additional 15,000 would be adequate?
To be clear, I'm not asking to be reimbursed for the fee the time that we spent up to the end of May that exceeds the fee that I gave to the town. Based on a variety of conditions and decisions that need to be made, I'm projecting 2 more months. So I effectively took our fee for the first 6 months and took 2 months of that on a monthly basis, and that is the reason for the amount that I've requested. I don't expect that the time involved in the next 2 months will make up the 23,000 that we exceeded in May. I'm not asking for that. I'm simply projecting that it will take until the end of July to complete the work and coordinate with the mayor and the town about certain decisions that need to be made to finalize the drawings.
Okay, thank you. So then my second follow-on is, can you just give us you or Barb, give us a couple of examples of decisions that we anticipate will need to be made between now and August? And then I also had a question for Barb and the mayor. Is Mr. Keller and also Mr. Miller, are they continuing on as part of a working group to support this effort, or do we need to replace some of that capability?
Yeah. You want me to take that, Bob?
I think you might want to answer because you discussed with Greg how you wanted to
Yeah,
proceed.
absolutely. Thanks, Councilmember Bennett. The one of the things, maybe I'll take a half a step back, that Greg and Gabby and I at Wiedemann Architects had discussed was the town is currently a bit spoiled on all the experts that we have, and there's a number of architects and technical experts. What we have put in place is a more streamlined mode of communication. So the town will be speaking in one voice, which will be mine. That will be informed by people who are much more technically savvy than I. But I think that being able to utilize the design committee, which is what it was informally referred to, which consisted of Carl Miller, Chris Keller, and George Miller, will continue to be leveraged on this side as experts for the town. Again, that'll inform a single point of communication that'll then be relayed to Wiedemann Architects, so that if there are gating steps, we know them. We can make sure that we triage those so that we can finish what needs to be finished by the end of July and keep us to this schedule. Does that make sense, Jerry?
Yes, that answers my second question. So what about the first question of what decisions we anticipate needing to make between now and August?
Some of those decisions involve portions of the project that affect our work but are not part of the scope of our work. And among those are, and you've made progress on some of them, and the mayor has been great at expediting certain decisions. The first one that delayed us for the submission of all of the fire department, the mandatory referral, and other site-related matters had to do with discrepancies in the survey initially in terms of where the fencing was, and then also the final decision about the fence and its height, its character, and its location. I think we've moved forward on that. The civil engineer is now preparing the documents that reflect those decisions, and they can file shortly, hopefully by the end of the month. The next thing is
Permit or file for what?
I'm sorry, for fire department approval, which related to the distance to the fence on the north side. File for mandatory referral, which is the planning department review of the project, and sediment control, which is also governed by the location of the property line relative to the fence lines. In addition to that, the town has moved forward with an acoustical consultant and EAI, I believe, regarding security systems. And there's coordination involved in both of those reports, which are still outstanding. And then possibly one of the more difficult ones is the audio video. We would like to include, certainly the the necessary electrical work for the audio video, not necessarily the equipment, but to have it designed so that the general contractor will be able to coordinate the audio video and low voltage installation as part of the contract.
That makes a
So-
lot of sense.
So those are some examples.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
It'll be covered in the town manager's report, the status of the acoustic diagnostic tests that were done in the report, which is a little delayed, unfortunately, due to reasons beyond our control. But the thought was that that report would help us make some more informed decisions about AV, because we'll have a better understanding of the sound in this room. We don't want to or under-resource. So that my hope would be we get that report, and then I do think we're going to have to move fairly quickly to make some decisions around AV and get them to Greg kind of shortly thereafter. And we have a lot of, and I can work with Barb to resurface some. There's been a lot of back and forth around AV with some folks in town who really know their stuff, and then that initial report provided by Amy. So I think the hope would be to move pretty quickly once we get that acoustic report.
Has the location of the equipment been identified so that the wiring can be put
No.
in place before we buy the equipment?
No.
Or is that all still?
I think it's part of it. Yeah.
Any other questions from the council?
I do have one question for Greg. I'm looking at the proposed change order. It's on the backside of the handout that we received. I understand first one, WA was by Wiedemann Architects, but who is EB?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Ellert Bryant. They are the structural engineers. We're
Okay.
not requesting any additional fee for them.
Oh, you've got $7,700, looks like.
I'm sorry if that was confusing, but that calculation to the
Oh,
right was the
I see.
total fee.
Plus
So
the-
because their fee and the management fee on top of their fee was not increased, it remained the same as the original contract.
I see that. My mistake. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, thank you, Greg. I will entertain a motion to approve change order number 1 from Wiedemann Architects. Do I hear a motion to adopt the change order?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the change order is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Greg, for your
Thank you,
continued
Mayor.
work with us. Greg, if I could just leverage your expertise for 30 more seconds while I have you. You and I had a chance to catch up the last couple of weeks, and one of the questions that I think a lot of the council members and I get is, can you give us, we won't hold you to it, but can you give us kind of a timing schedule for actual beginning of construction when bids go out? I know you and I talked about it, and it's certainly not etched in stone at this point. But working backwards from November, I think that we feel the construction can probably start at that time frame. Can I just leverage your expertise, because you would be much more eloquent than I in helping us respond to some of these queries around town?
Yes. It would be my recommendation that the bidding process be discussed and fleshed out during the remaining 2 months of the construction documents. And it would be my recommendation, if it is possible, to develop a criteria for the selection of the contractor based on certain qualifications, and do a broad request for qualifications from interested contractors. So it would be my recommendation to do that over the next 2 months, so that in August, one could put together the bid documents that are necessary to secure a bid. I would think that it would go out to bid, say, in September, and you'd get the bids back in October and hopefully be able to start in the November timeframe as a general
Greg, did the
outline.
hall permits required for including a building permit in August?
So it would be my recommendation to expedite it, to file for the building permit as early as possible. So that could occur in early August. We are concurrently doing a library in the Noyes Children's Library in Kensington, which is a county project. And we did exactly that. We secured the permit in advance of the bid process. So the the payment for the permit is modest at filing stage, and it is largely the significant part of the fee is paid when you secure the permit. So it doesn't
And the
require.
From the time that you submit drawing plans and specs to the time you get a building permit, how long is that process typically?
In the range of 8 weeks.
Yeah,
So the sooner we can get that in, the better.
right. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I think we are now armed with at least some preliminary answers to questions that we have. Greg, thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Greg.
Thank you.
Next order of business is the town manager's report. Barb, would you mind walking us through this,
Sure.
please?
So included in your agenda packet is the financial report for the month of May. You spent so much time recently talking about the budget that there's not a lot to say about the May financial report. I would just note that the budget amendment number 2 that you all adopted on May 11th does not take effect until June 1st. So none of those modifications are reflected in the May financial report. Just wanted to note that we did receive an income tax payment, which is account 2.2, in the amount of roughly $146,000 during the month of May. One of the things just of note is that the county council did adopt the county's operating budget and the 6-year capital improvements program on May 21st. As the more tenured members may recall, there were 2 items that I was tracking through that process. One was a possible reduction in our municipal tax duplication payments. This was on the chopping block at one point as the county council was trying to wrestle with how to provide funding to MCPS. I have been advised that the county council's adopted budget does include municipal tax duplication payments at the same level as was recommended by the county executive. The other item that I was kind of trying to keep a handle on was the various discussions by both the county executive and the county council about the local income tax structure. Just as a reminder, local income tax revenue is one of our top 2 primary funding sources. It represents the share that we get from what is often referred to as a piggyback tax, which is something levied by counties. Their current county income tax rate is 3.2%. The county executive in his budget proposed an increase from 3.2 to 3.3%, which is the maximum allowed under state law. To date, the county has levied its piggyback tax equally across all tax filers, regardless of yearly earnings. The county council president did propose, and this is what was adopted, was a progressive income tax structure. So they did vote to put in the 3.3% maximum, as was recommended by County Executive Elrich. But as you'll note in my report, basically filers who made less than, their adjusted gross income was less than $150,000 would be paying less than the current 3.2%. Those who have adjusted gross income between $150,000 and $300,000 would still be paying 3.2%. So the new maximum of 3.3% would only be applicable to filers who have an adjusted gross income of more than $300,000. Obviously, the obvious question is, how is this going to affect Garrett Park? I think that's a bit of an unknown. As you all might recall, and I say this probably every single budget season and often besides that, income tax receipts are incredibly difficult to project. One of the major reasons why is that it's the impact of capital gains. So if you go back and you look historically at what we've gotten in income tax revenue, this year I did spend some time with someone in the comptroller's office. Capital gains can really cause, $150,000, $200,000 swings from year to year. So it's just difficult to project, and we'll just have to see how the new county income tax structure impacts us. So that'll be just probably, I think, the biggest thing coming out of the county council's decision-making process with the budget. I'm kind of switching over to projects. The bid package for the Cambria Park improvements, otherwise known as the field renovation project, was issued on May 20th. There are improvements beyond renovating the field. Just to note, it involves the regrading of the field, fencing replacement, a slight expansion of the playing area towards the tracks, as well as the addition of a small retaining wall. The deadline for submitting bids is 2 p.m. on June 18th. The plan has been to request a contract award at the July Town Council meeting, which obviously weighs into your discussion later this evening. But the bid package does anticipate that. The current schedule would be that you all would award what was anticipated at your July meeting. That would give the contractor time to basically plan for mobilization. They would probably do some pre-site mobilization in the days leading up to, before the pool closes, and then getting to work shortly thereafter. Bid package does call for all work to be completed by October 30th. So the more that your award date slides, the more difficult it's going to be to keep this project on schedule.
What happens if we don't get any bids?
If we don't get any bid,
Well, I'm just thinking back to Yandle when we got one. What happens if we get none?
hopefully that won't happen. George Miller represented the staff at the pre-bid meeting, which was last Thursday. I haven't seen the pre-bid sheet because Jason Azar was out of the office today. I know there were 5 firm representatives at the pre-bid meeting. Now, whether that was 5 separate firms or sometimes there's some overlap. Some firms will send 2 people to pre-bid
Sure.
meetings, but there were at least people who showed up.
Okay.
So that's
All right.
that's good.
That's good.
Yeah. Of course, we did have 4 at Yandle as well. So you had a lot of discussion just a few minutes ago about town hall. Just a couple updates on some of the issues that came up during your discussion with Greg Wiedemann. We did execute a contract, and I think I may have mentioned this last month, with Bay Acoustics on May 8th. They conducted a site visit on May 12th. We were expecting to get a report no later than June 1st. Unfortunately, one of the key people involved in our project kind of had a medical emergency. I did hear from that individual. I think he was going to try to catch up over the weekend after being released from the hospital. I told him certainly he should focus on his health and we could wait a few days. So he did share in his email, though, just that he had gone through the testing results from his May 12th visit, and he said he found them a little surprising. He said the reverberation time was much lower than he would have expected. He said for just the metric of reverberation time, the space meets the typical design goals. This means that the solutions are not as straightforward as first anticipated. Of course not.
Wonderful.
Of course not. So basically, he hopes to get a report soon. Hopefully we'll have that maybe by the end of this week, depending on how he's feeling. And then he said his recommendation was that Bay Acoustics would review the initial findings and recommendations with you all, as well as the architect, and those would be included in the draft report. And then depending on the feedback that he gets from that process, they will then finalize the room acoustic treatments for incorporation into the construction
So if
documents.
he was going to do that, would that be at a July council meeting?
Yeah, I think that's kind of an
We'll
internal.
need to think through what.
I was gonna
How much is this going to delay Greg?
Right. I think that's one of the things I was going to say, Councilmember Deutsch, is that you all might want to figure out, obviously Mayor Stroud has been sort of the point person with the architect. I think George Miller knows this building well, so I would certainly suggest
Yep.
maybe he be part of that discussion. But I think you all, if you can provide any direction right now, that would be helpful, is are you more
How
comfortable?
involved?
Right, not involving everybody and
Full
having it
count,
come
got it.
back to a meeting. So that's something I think you could think about, is maybe have Mayor Stroud, perhaps, bring in George Miller to meet with Wiedemann and Bay Acoustics and just give those individuals
Yep.
the decision-making thing, just to go
In the
ahead and
interest of-
moving things forward. Because
Yeah,
obviously you
I
only
think
meet
that-
once a month and
I
Yeah.
think that's great. And Barb, thank you for apologies for speaking over to you. I think that timing is of significant concern. So to the extent that we cannot delay, we're able to make any decisions we need for Bay Acoustics or others. I would prefer not to have to wait till the council meetings. But yes, thanks. Sorry, Barb. Sorry.
No, not at all. Like I say, I think, I think that would certainly move things along, and I know Mayor Stroud will do a great job of keeping you all informed as decisions get made. Kind of switching to EAI, which was the other element that is excluded from Wiedemann's scope of work. However, there is coordination required. This has to do with the security system, the burglar alarm, the coded building access for renters. As I mentioned last month, Maintenance Supervisor George Miller and our Assistant Town Manager Kayla Bucher met with a representative from EAI Security Systems in April, basically to talk about what was needed. Bringing EAI on board at this juncture basically will make sure that we kind of keep things moving with the preparation of the construction documents. As a reminder, they have been a vendor for the town. They also have a lot of other governmental contracts. EAI basically replaced the fire alarm system at Penn Place and also was the one that put in the security cameras there. We have been coordinating with our IT vendor because obviously there are kind of cybersecurity related issues in terms of how everything connects. We're just putting the finishing touches, I think, on the EAI proposal to make sure we have everything that EAI needs, as well as that our IT vendor is comfortable with how everything is connecting. One thing, and Mayor Stroud and I haven't had the chance to mention this to him, the EAI equipment will have to be housed in a lock cabinet. So one of the things we'll need to work with Wiedemann on is just storage for that equipment, because that equipment does need to be secured and locked away. Yeah, you don't typically, we'll probably be putting a network connection in because you don't typically do things over Wi-Fi. So there'll probably be a network connection. I think we'll be here, but I know EAI has to house its network connection equipment someplace. So one of the things we need to figure out is how much space does EAI need based on what the IT vendor tells them. But it's EAI's equipment, so we'll just have to find out how big of a storage cabinet is needed and then work with Wiedemann to make sure we can provide that.
Say same thing.
Yeah, so that'll be a little separate. So we do anticipate the EAI contract, hopefully it'll be less than this, but it's underneath the threshold that requires council approval. So we'll be preparing that contract. And since it won't require council approval, we hope to have that signed in no later than the next 2 weeks, probably sooner than that. In terms of the audiovisual, I know and Councilmember Deutsch may want to speak to this more, but I know there were some concerns from Bay Acoustics about speccing equipment that could become outdated. I think what is probably important at this juncture is that we at least have an idea of what equipment we want so that we can basically make sure, as Greg Wiedemann indicated, there's appropriate electrical connections. But right now, we really don't have anybody who is on board who can basically mark up the drawings. So we'll just have to talk to Greg about how to handle that. But those connections do need to be made, if nothing else, through conduit that's put in during the construction process. One of the other issues that I know Councilmember Schultz has been very interested in is just trying to determine what condition is the lateral sewer line in. We did bring in a plumber who came out a week ago today, basically to do a little bit of refinement of the work that AdTech, the civil engineer, had done. Basically, the plumber used a camera, traced and recorded the line all the way to the street connection. The lateral sewer line is all cast iron pipe, which you see a lot in this area from a long, long time ago. It was found to be in good shape. It's clear of any obstruction, so that was all good news. I have relayed that to Wiedemann and to the civil engineer. The plumber did have a couple recommendations in terms of just given the nature of the material of the line. He wanted 2 cleanouts to be installed as part of the building renovation. And he was also recommending that we go with 1.6 gallon toilets instead of 1.0. Don't ask me to explain that, but apparently it has something to do with the cast iron pipe and just things he's seen during the scope of his work.
Shall we say, moving things along?
Yes, literally. So, things are moving along. Did want to mention, I didn't put this in my report. So one of the things with the federal grant and the National Park Service is you have to prepare their budget in a way that accompanies photo documentation. So what that means is the way that the cost estimating firm prepared the cost estimate, which is very common. You do it basically on the way that the trades will submit their information to the general contractor. Basically, I worked with CCS to basically look at what's likely excluded. The National Park Service does have very specific things that they will pay for and things they do not. To take the cost estimate that was presented to you all, I believe it was back in September, and basically recategorize things in a way that the National Park Service will accept. So I've requested a meeting with the cost estimator for this Wednesday and need to just go over a few things with him and finish up the paperwork for that. So the construction drawings will need to be reviewed by the National Park Service before we can begin construction, and Wiedemann is aware of that. So I think that's it on Town Hall, unless anybody has any questions.
Barb, I was curious if the Park Service had offered any kind of timeline once they review
The paperwork.
The paperwork.
It's about 90 days roughly.
So 90 days after we
They-
submit construction documents?
It's basically, the first thing is all the paperwork, which is why I'm trying to make sure I understand everything that I got from the cost estimator. We need to get some photographic documentation. So what they want to see, which is vastly different from the state, much to yours truly chagrin. For the state grants, basically, you can just put a hard construction number and they don't really question what's in it. Because I think of the nature of the federal grant that we got, it is saving America's treasures. They want to know specifically. So the example they use is if you're replacing a roof, they want a dollar cost assigned to the roof and they want to see pictures of the roof. In our case, that would be siding. They will, which I think I've known this for a while, they will not pay for anything related to the rear addition because that is non-historic. When we were going through the Senate appropriations process, we did have to get a certification from the Maryland Historical Trust that there was nothing historic about the back, but they typically do not pay for demolition. I had been advised back in 2024 through then Senator Cardin's office that they were going to treat the front of the building differently. Obviously, Senator Cardin is no longer in office. My point of contact who kind of guided us through that process is nowhere around. So I'm hoping that there will not be an unpleasant surprise about the front of the building. But I've had a lot of conversations with them because I needed the cost estimate done.
It's 3 months from the time you submit.
I have two things that I'm focusing on this week once we get past this evening. One is the accounting services transition, and the other is the federal paperwork. So if you come in line for anything else, you probably won't hear anything from me for a while until that's done. So yeah, that just needs to move. I'll have a better idea after Wednesday. I have started filling out some of the paperwork. The cost estimate is the part and getting the photographic documentation. So I'm going to ask George Miller if he can assist with that. But I need to see how the cost estimator broke everything down and make sure everything is as discrete as it can be, because they simply will not accept broad construction numbers.
July.
Yes. I don't think mentally, Lisa, I can take it if it hangs out anymore on my plate, quite frankly. Switching to Yendel, it's moving along well. If you haven't had the chance, I mean, obviously Erica has a bird's eye view. The landscaping subcontractor to Keller Brothers mobilized on June 1st. That, the bulk of the project at this point is landscaping. They're basically starting at the rear of the site and kind of working their way out. It is a very, very tight site, so they're trying to avoid people tripping literally over each other. They're starting at the back and working their way back up to the street. They had estimated landscaping, weather permitting, of course, would be anywhere from roughly 3 to 4 weeks. They did get a little bit delayed when we got the downpour right before Memorial Day. They had to let the site dry out.
Barb, I wanted to thank you for your thorough response to, we had a resident reach
Yeah.
out and say, I'm just a little concerned. There's giant pools of water at Yandle, and is that supposed to be like that? And
Yeah, it was a little alarming to look at the
it
pictures
was
myself.
alarming, and I appreciated how
Yeah.
quickly and thoroughly you responded
sure.
to her.
Happy.
That's just the type of, it was just a great model of answering concerns and putting
Yeah.
everyone at ease. So
Thank you.
To piggyback off of
Yeah.
that, I was curious what kind of drainage solutions, water excess pipes that they've installed, right? Because that is a tremendous issue for those people down on Kenilworth. So I was curious about what direction they're funneling that water.
Hopefully you had received it, but if not, I had sent something out to the individual who originally reached out to me with the concern. I can send that to you, Councilmember Selly. But yeah, there is, I think the initial concern, probably because there was so much water, so you couldn't see anything, is that there weren't any pipes. There is actually one, it's capped currently because basically we didn't want to end up with a sediment control problem. But yeah, there's some natural kind of fall from the regrading that's being done. So it should be taking the water away from some of the people I know had problems on Kenilworth a number of years ago.
Yeah, because I mean, there is a sewage drain or a drain right over there. So
There
is
is.
that their plan to funnel it towards?
I think it's actually funneling the other direction. I'm going off memory here, but I can bring that up if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be.
Let me see if I can.
Is there a reason why they decided they didn't want to go underneath the sidewalk? Because when I looked at the way that pipe is going to land, the outflow of the pipe is going to land versus where they've proposed it, it just seemed like it wasn't the best spot in the world, but
Yeah,
I
so I
wonder
was,
why they decided that they wanted to move it.
yeah, and I can certainly ask that. So I'm just bringing up the email that I had sent. So right around the time we did hear from this resident, we do get periodic visits from the Montgomery County Sediment and Erosion Control Inspector. So he happened to be on site just a few days after we got the email about the resident being concerned. Everything was found to be in time. So there is a drainage pipe. As I mentioned, it's currently capped to prevent any mud or sediment from washing onto the street, which would trigger a DPS problem for sure. So basically, there are also, at the time, this was on May 27th, there were some flat areas that were depressed that are ultimately are being raised about 7 to 8 inches, and there will be a perimeter drain installed around the playground surfacing. So to answer Councilmember Selly's question, the location of the perimeter drain is along the south side of the upper playground log pile. I was going to say it's highlighted in yellow, but you can't see this. I can see if I can bring this up actually on the screen. So there is a single drain that's going to manage all of the surface water in the upper playground. One of the things that was noted in my communications with both Keller and Norton Land Design, these areas will be built up with compacted subgrade, fiber felt and wood safety surfacing with approximately 1 inch of curb remaining visible. So basically everything's going to be raised essentially. And I will send this to you right now, Councilmember Selly. So there is some natural fall. They cited the elevation, which should allow the water to drain without any kind of intervention. So there's some grass pave, gravel pave, both of which are highly pervious surfaces. And they went into a lot of the mechanics. So Councilmember Selly, I'm going to forward this to you and then please follow up with me if you have any questions.
Yeah, just one last question. I
Sure.
don't mean to belabor the
No.
point. Have they tested it at all? Or you said it's capped, right? So.
It is kept. We have a progress meeting on Wednesday. I'll double check that with them.
Okay, thank you.
Or who's gonna be responsible since it's getting planted late in the season to water all of this so it doesn't all die?
Yeah, I need to go back and look at the bid specifications, Lisa. That's on my to-do list to check because obviously it is going in at a more challenging time.
Just make sure it's on somebody's assigned to make sure. it's on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that there was a maintenance,
planned.
planned maintenance included, but it's worth double checking.
Yeah.
The other thing I was gonna ask too is, do they have any clean outs planned for that outlet?
Yeah, I have to go back and look at the plans, Phil, but I'll do that.
Thanks.
Kind of moving along. So basically, I guess with the Endel, I think, knock on wood, they may be done sooner than this, but by contract, they have to be done by late July. Maintenance team, just kind of wrapping up. It's just busy as always. Obviously they're in full mowing mode now. They are watering the recently planted town trees, and when time permits, they are trying to tackle some of the invasives as requested by our consulting arborist. George Miller, our maintenance supervisor, did oversee some projects at Penn Place, specifically replacing a new hot water heater. We were having some issues with the second floor restrooms. And they also did some additional work. They hired a plumber to do some work. There was a problem with the sink drain and trap for one of the restrooms on the second floor. So that concludes my report. Would be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Any other questions from council for Barb?
I walked the sidewalk and the new trees and the lights look fabulous, so I know it's been a long time, but it's quite as good as.
Right. Thank you, Lisa.
They do look very nice. They do look very nice. And I think everyone feels a little bit more comfortable with the light down there. We waited a little bit longer, but it really is worth the wait. Next order of business. Thank you so much, Barb. Greatly appreciate it as always. Next order of business is any unfinished business to be taken up by the council. The sole item here is what Jim Cole made reference to, is finalizing the driveway permit standards for work in the town right of way. Maybe Barb, before we talk through the specific language, I want to take a minute to distill what we're looking to accomplish tonight. In very simple terms, we are defining a standard by which driveway permit applications will be reviewed. And what we decide this evening will be used to amend Chapter 7 of the Town Code. Barb, correct me if I'm wrong on the code there, but I believe it's Chapter 7.
You're correct.
The way the code is currently written does not provide guidance to residents. The lack of guidance creates unnecessary headaches for residents, staff, and the council. And the way it stands now is that each request for permit requires an ad hoc decision to be made by the mayor. I think we can do a little bit better to provide clarity for the town. So I've spoken with most of you on ways forward here, but I'd like us to conclude this discussion, and this can go on for as long as we feel comfortable, but I want to conclude this discussion by providing a common sense and really as straightforward as possible solution for the folks in Garrett Park that incorporates not just safety, cost, and efficiency for the town, but also respects what is most realistically convenient and simple for our neighbors. After speaking with the town's civil engineer, our own maintenance crew, and a number of residents during these very same meetings, I believe we have a workable foundation to begin the discussion with. I want to read these standards so they can be in the public record. There are 5 of them. The first is
These are the proposed.
this is the foundation, which was basically we discussed in February at the February town council meeting. We didn't make a decision at that time, but this is the kind of the foundation that that's on the table, right? So the first is where no sidewalk exists, the driveway apron must be constructed with concrete, have a depth of 7 inches, and be at least 5 feet in length. That's what's currently on the table. Where a sidewalk does exist, the driveway apron must be constructed with concrete, have a depth of 7 inches, and extend all the way to the sidewalk. We will, or on the table, I should say, is the continuation to allow the use of pavers, provided that they are ADA compliant and set in 7 inches of concrete and that the property owner executes a public right-of-way agreement that holds the town harmless for any damage caused by snow removal activities. These agreements are recorded in the land records and transfer with the sale of the property. Outside of the requirements noted above, residents can use whatever material they wish, both in the remaining town right-of-way and on their own property. The final piece on this is circular driveways. Those are fine, subject to the aprons on both sides of the circular driveway, following the requirements previously mentioned. Before I entertain a motion to approve the above as it's currently written, I suspect we want to have conversation, and so I'll open it up to comments, questions, or concerns from council members at this point.
You know, it was interesting at the candidate forum and in some other places to hear residents speak up and be puzzled by what they were seeing as action on our part that was maybe overcomplicating this issue. And I feel like, I know during some of our initial conversations, the whole point was to simplify as best as we can, and give homeowners as much flexibility as possible. So clearly something got a little, misunderstood in that process and maybe not communicated effectively. So I'm glad we're revisiting it now. And I agree with Jim's point and the point other residents have made that if the concrete issue is specific to primarily snow plows and snow plow damage, then let's not require 5 feet of concrete apron, because the snow plow is not going to go on that concrete apron. And let's give the homeowners the flexibility to do what they will with that apron and focus on concrete, I guess, right at the end of that apron. I don't know, what's the term for that? Or the entryway or whatever, if that's, what we need to do to make sure we're not tearing up people's driveways. But I guess I'd like to see homeowners have as much flexibility as possible here.
Well, Phil, I'm not an engineer, but one of the questions that I would have, I just put in a 5-foot extension on concrete on the new house I just built. And the only question I have is if it's only like 12 inches or 24 inches, a little slab of concrete 7 inches deep, and a car comes in and turns on it, is it going to be stable enough, or is it going to break? Because I think there's some physics involved, and I don't know the answer, but it would be a question. And my other question is, do we want any visible consistency with other concrete driveways being asphalt driveways or decorative paving, or can it just be a hodgepodge and do we care? So those would be.
Yeah. Mayor Stroud, if I may, I did have the opportunity to have an email exchange with Jason Azar, our civil engineer. He was actually out of the office, but kind enough to respond. So if I may, I can answer some of Councilmember Max's questions. I am not an engineer either, but she is 100% on target with what he told me, that there is some physics involved. So just kind of recapping. So the standard that we followed for many years was the Montgomery County standard. That called for concrete to the property line. And obviously one of the issues that I understood that you all were concerned about is the distance of the right-of-way varies greatly, and in some cases is quite extreme. So concrete's not an unusual surface to require for aprons, has a longer useful life, and it does, as you all have been talking about, minimize the chance of damage. And that's not only just coming from snow plows, that is also coming from the turning movements, as Councilmember Max mentioned.
Is that damage to the concrete part or the other surface?
A little bit of both, so if I can. So basically what you all did in February, which obviously you're now talking about again, is my understanding is you wanted to be less onerous than the county prior town standard, and also sort of just recognize that there are people who literally have 20-foot right-of-ways in Garrett Park, which makes no sense at all. But the potential impacts to aprons, certainly snowplow strikes are the ones that have been most talked about. This goes back to the February discussion. It's also in the February memo, but one thing about aprons is they are subject to vehicular loading, generally almost daily for most of us are going in and out. That's not just from cars, that's delivery vehicles, in some cases when people are doing work on their property, construction vehicles, all sorts of things. So basically, and I think this is where you all have some decisions to make, but to quote Jason Azar, 6 inches of concrete basically doesn't have a lot of stability. Basically, if something gets hit or overloaded, I'm not a physics person either. I was more of a math girl than a science, but basically there's kind of, he just basically says 6 inches of concrete would do basically nothing. It would just break apart.
Barb, may I ask, when you're referring to 6 inches, you're talking about the length, not the depth, right?
That is correct,
okay,
yeah.
7 inches of depth.
Right, but
6
I think
inches.
it's been talked about, like, why do we need, 5 feet? What Jason basically said is there's some judgment involved. So basically, he said anything less than 2 feet basically just is not going to have much structural stability. I think there's two things, and I think, Lisa, you hit on one of them is, there's a structural stability question, but there's also, if you go, let's say you go for 2 feet, do you want someone doing work where you have a sidewalk that generally is 5 to 6 feet in, length, and then have someone tearing everything up and having 2 feet of concrete, then 4 feet, in some cases on Kenilworth, for an example, of asphalt? That's an aesthetics issue. That's up to you all. The one thing that Jason Azar also mentioned, and once again, he was off, so some of this was over email and over text. He basically noted that if asphalt is used for an apron and it fails, there can be impacts to the actual town roadway, basically. He specifically mentioned if someone's personal asphalt starts failing, there can be water infiltration into the subgrade of the town road. That obviously has consequences for Garrett Park. He also referenced something called, you can have an asphalt driveway or apron that has block cracking, which is basically when you start seeing things that large square cracks that can be due to stress, moisture, or temperature changes. So I did want to also, I think, just echo something the mayor said. I think the issue we have now is beginning in November. At this point, we don't really have a standard, and I'm not a lawyer, but I can say that having every driveway evaluated on a case-by-case basis is problematic. I think I could safely speak for Ron Bolt. We have stripped any reference to any kind of standard from the town website, and what it says now is that every driveway permit decision will be made by the mayor on a case-by-case basis because staff doesn't have anything to review. I think as we've gone through these discussions over the last year or two, and just to alleviate Mr. Cole's concern, the goal here has really been for you all to adopt a standard. There would be an ordinance that would be passed that, among other things, would basically state that how the town will consider driveway permit applications, whether that's the material, whatever standard is agreed upon, basically would then be adopted by resolution. So that would be an action of the town council, not of staff. And staff would then use that adopted standard in reviewing applications. So I just want to alleviate any concern. Staff would basically be implementing the standard that you all formally adopt, and that's what we're hoping to get to tonight. Included in your agenda packet was something that was mocked up by Clark Azar based on your February discussion. Obviously, that can be changed at your direction this evening.
Thank you, Barb. Just to clarify again, since I have no vote here, but I do want to make sure that we keep this discussion on track. From the takeaway there, Barb, from Azar was that less than 2 feet becomes an issue, right?
Correct. He basically said if you were going to, not in so many words, but anything less than 2 feet, he said anything less than 2 feet would just break up because it could not take the impacts.
So if we did, for example, if we did 6 inches, that is great. That takes care of the snow plow, but does not have the structural integrity. It would be broken down according to our civil engineer.
Yeah, I don't think he said it would take the hit because basically, once again, I am not a science person. Phil might be able to help me more than this, but if you hit something, there are reverberating impacts to a surface. And I think he's basically saying whether it's a plow, the turning movements that Lisa referred to, basically, if you do anything less than 2 feet, there's just not the structural stability.
Thank you. That's perfect.
And then I think you have this aesthetic issue in terms of how do you do connections to the sidewalks.
Right, exactly. So again, just for purposes of keeping us on track here, so Azar was clear about the minimum of 2 feet.
Correct.
It brings up the question of the sidewalk and in an issue where there's sidewalks. On the way here, I was walking through and taking a look at it. You could have a situation if we do 2 feet where there's 2 foot apron, then 3 feet of asphalt, and then a sidewalk again. So I think what, again, I don't have a vote here, but what the individual council members have to decide is if we feel that 2 feet is the structural minimum, we have 5 feet on the table. I think what it really comes down to is what is that length, both for with a sidewalk and without a sidewalk? The only other item I think we do want to touch on is the distinction between replacement and repair. Again, this is so that we have a standard, and I do feel that I feel very strongly that we should conclude this discussion by being able to have a standard. I think the ad hoc nature of it right now just doesn't do justice for what we're trying to accomplish. So I think what is now, and again, certainly we want to continue discussing this, but what we have currently is 5 feet and the sidewalk. And so if we want to talk through changing that 5 feet to something else, I'll entertain it and I'll record it. But at the end, I want to go ahead and read through and so that we can adopt those. And
Towns in and around Garrett Park, have any of those adopted a concrete apron standard that you know of?
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of research on that. I know Clark Azar also represents a number of the smaller municipalities. So this is more kind of anecdotal in talking to him about, I think a lot of them have like 4 to 5 feet. We didn't specifically talk in the past about sidewalk connections. I would say, I've worked in other parts of the country. I would say typically 4 to 5 feet is what I've seen. Generally, a lot of them are connections to sidewalks because a lot of the places I've worked are very urban areas. And so sidewalks are important and they want to see the connections to the sidewalk in one material.
any other thoughts on length?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Gary.
The length of the
You mean the depth of the,
No. So I look at the depth as how deep the concrete is. That's 7 inches. I'm
Okay.
talking about the length from the street,
okay.
meaning how far from the street. Right now, again, it's 5 feet or the sidewalk.
Mhm.
Again, I think that's the primary, that's on the table currently.
Well, I just want to mention 2 things. One, I do think that the way this was put on the agenda as more of a discussion did not make it clear and transparent to the community that this was going to be an action item to establish a standard. So I'm a little uncomfortable being pressed to make a decision on this tonight because I was under the impression this was a discussion where we would be providing some direction perhaps for some drafting of a document or something. So I just want to, is that what is intended here, that we're providing direction for then the staff to draft a resolution? I want to make sure I understand that.
Yeah, I guess my hope is that there seemed to be an indication that perhaps there was some desire to revisit the decision from February. And certainly I think where we are today in terms of driveway permits coming up, I would not want to be in the mayor's shoes, quite frankly, having to look at each and every one of them without knowing where you all stood. Assuming you provide guidance this evening, the draft ordinance that we've talked about on a couple of occasions that certainly needed some work would be retweaked with the guidance of the town attorney, changing wording to match whatever preliminary direction you give this evening. So the ordinance would be the thing that would first come before you. That requires 2 readings. And that ordinance would authorize the adoption of whatever standard you all want by resolution. So Ordinances, as you know, unless they're an emergency, take 2 readings. In all likelihood, you're taking 1 month off during the summer. But my thought had been to basically, once the ordinance was placed on the agenda for adoption, a resolution would be placed on that same meeting agenda, with the resolution adopting your standard having the same effective date as the ordinance, because ordinances are not effective for 21 days after adoption. So I'm looking for guidance to know what to draft at this point.
Okay,
That's,
that helps.
that's my hope.
Yeah, to be
Um,
clear, and thanks, Jerry, I appreciate the delineation between that. What we're looking for at the conclusion of this is direction. That we're looking for direction. There's a process that will ensue at the end of that. We are just trying to get the kind of the bones in place, as it were, direction, and this is the continuation from February. But your point, understand your point completely.
So, a couple of things. First, can we find out from Clark Azar why 5 foot was there? I mean, I see it also in the Montgomery County spec. There had to have been a reason. I mean, for me, I wouldn't want to be arguing with a homeowner to fix their asphalt,
Yeah.
in the first 5 feet. My asphalt's already cracked in one corner. I mean, we can see it, but there has to be some reason why everybody built these things at 5 foot, because I checked mine, it is 5 foot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say I can ask them that. I think there is some discretion involved. In my experience, I've worked in more urbanized, suburbanized area that had lots of pedestrian traffic, so we had sidewalks. And generally, I think it was trying to create the connection to the sidewalk. If there's adequate space, I think most people try to set their sidewalks as a local government somewhat back. So you can either call it a grass strip or you can call it a weed strip, depending on your point of view. But I think oftentimes in my experience, Phil, it's been to connect to the sidewalk and to have one consistent material leading up to the sidewalk.
Very good point.
So that's what I've seen where I have worked. That doesn't mean that's the only way to do it. And certainly there aren't sidewalks everywhere. I was not here for the safe routes to school. I would just also note that there are people who got sidewalks who didn't want them.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Put in a driveway.
You're still going, Phil, sorry.
So that was one thing. I mean, I think that when we look at it, a big truck making a turn is
Yeah.
probably going to hit it. There's a very good point about the 5 foot setback, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, from the edge. I think that makes a very good point. I also noticed that there's a few things in here on the thing that Jason had done, and he refers to things like Maryland State Highway. And I'll pick a random number here. I'll pick a sheet 3 of 5. I mean, if you're working from the back.
Those are county standards.
What?
Are you talking about the 301.04, 301.05?
No, I'm
Okay.
talking about
Oh, okay.
the ones.
Oh, that he drafted for us. Okay.
Personally, I would like it if we spelled out what year and what spec,
Okay.
because we don't want to get caught in this situation. We've discussed this with other ordinances and other things where the county or the state makes a change and we have no say in it because we hardwired into this thing.
Correct. Yeah.
We're going to keep up with whatever it is, and we may not want whatever it is, because I can assume that we have the ability to specify what we want.
We do. I mean, there are some ADA considerations that come into play if there is a sidewalk. That was one of the issues you may recall came up with allowing pavers in certain situations.
Right. And there's also on that same number 4, it calls out standard MC 301.04 driveway limited width. Well, we have to look, because I see on this one, for example, and on the other one, they called out 20-foot minimum across. And I want to make sure that we want to have that whole 20 feet, or do we want to go with something smaller? Because we talked about like a 20-foot maximum. Now I know that's the area that the vehicles would occupy, but when I look at this thing in terms of say a 10-foot, or if we look at 2 5-foot on each side, there's a lot of additional area we're adding,
Right.
which I'm not sure is the best thing to do.
For an individual house and an individual driveway, an individual apron, the width of the driveway is 20 feet.
There,
Be up to 20.
Minimum 10.
yeah, there are,
Wiring.
no, I will say there are some now. I know when we did the road work back in 2024, I believe it was on Kenilworth. It was someone with a circular driveway, and I seem to remember that being about 20 feet. So they do exist.
Sure.
It's 2-car.
Well,
Or two curb cuts. If you have two curb cuts, like with a circular driveway, you're going to measure from one curb cut to the other. So Phil, are you saying that you'd like it to be less than
well,
20 feet or?
for instance, what I'm looking at is if we looking at 3 of 5, they talk about a 5-foot minimum. Where they've got a 5 inches concrete block and I may be misreading this, but it talks about having a 5-foot minimum, I guess, tapering in from the side. And
Right.
they've got a concrete, looks like concrete block, or sod, so maybe sod's okay. Just double check and make sure we don't have to put concrete across the whole thing,
Okay.
if you could, please. And another thing that I had, which I don't know if we ever came to the end of this. Let me just quick find it again. Okay, it's just back up a sheet to 2 of 5. Number of entrances. Now we had it maybe considered for lot frontage of 90 feet, and that's under number of entrances. It's the last sentence. I thought we were going to consider under that, and I'm just wondering if we just strike that frontage of 90 feet.
Yeah,
on a
that
case by case basis.
that is what you had actually said at your
That's what I thought.
February discussion. I think it was February, is in the draft ordinance that you wanted any reference to whether it's circular driveways or two curb cuts, because sometimes those are different things, that you wanted the frontage reference deleted.
Yeah, good place. And depending on how you want to look at this, I'm going to go over to sheet 1 and go down to construction specification standards, and it's like the third one up from the bottom. I believe what they say is correct, which is provided the pavers are set on top of 7 inches of concrete versus the other thing which said set in 7 inches of concrete.
Okay, yeah, that is correct. They are set, I believe, into the concrete.
The idea was
Yeah.
that you put them on top, will be the decorative piece, but the real load bearing is going to be actually that
That's-
concrete underneath.
Yes, that's correct, Phil. Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Okey-doke. And, oh, I forgot grandfathering. I had a note about making sure we had included the circular driveways.
Correct. And I was noting, I guess, in the list of sort of policy questions, there are several properties, because I think this might even go back to 2024 or 2025. I had the maintenance team go out and note any place there were two curb cuts. There are a number of properties that actually have two separate driveways. Those are not circular driveways. My assumption was that you wanted those grandfathered as well. So I've got, we'll do another sweep, obviously, once we're a little further along. But basically, we will just have a list of those that had two curb cuts at whatever point in time of the effective date of any ordinance is. And those will be the ones that are grandfathered.
Right.
Barb, just a point of clarification, the circular driveways that we're talking about, we're going to take for the point of grandfathering, we're going to do that. But I think that what is being proposed at this point is that circular driveways will be fine as long as both of the circular driveways follow what we
That is
have
what
tonight.
That is what the nature of the discussion was in February, and
Okay.
that is staff's current understanding. Obviously,
Right.
you're kind of revisiting things, but yeah, I think what you had said back in February and prior to that as well was that both connections to the street needed to be whatever concrete standard you settle on, if any.
So that number of entrances section Phil was just referencing also refers to that too, right?
Correct. Yes.
So we would not, we would strike the number of permitted driveway entrances that may be constructed on a single family lot is restricted to one per street. That gets amended.
That is what you all had
Right.
previously decided, yeah. The draft ordinance, and Eric, I apologize, we're going into a lot of ancient history. I'd be happy to talk to you about it at any time, but there were going to be standards that would be evaluated. So one is, clearly safety related considerations, particularly if you live on like a street like yours. And then there were things like town tree preservation and any other thing that the council wanted to settle on.
I had thought that we were gonna do it kind of as a variance type thing.
That's the other question. Many of you all likened having a second curb cut. I mean, the reason some people don't like them is because you're adding impervious surface. You all wanted to consider them. It was likened to a variance. I think one of hopefully the discussion points. So when we draft something, we can bring back where you're at in this point in time, and that it mirrors that the variance process as a reminder. And that's the way we drafted it because of the specific likening to a variance. Variance requires properties to be posted. They require hearings before the town council. There was some discussion about that in February as to whether or not there was some questioning about that, but I don't think the discussion ever was finalized in terms of what is your review process for those.
I just think because it's gonna go on a case by case basis, and then we get the question, as Jim has brought up about it having to do with repairs, but it could still be the same boat here, is that, if somebody makes a decision, is that the final decision? And so what I'm thinking is, if we have a public hearing like a variance and we just did one not that long ago for somebody, where we say, okay, we bring it in, they do all the work, and then we can yay or nay, but we've got a whole group of us.
Correct. My understanding is that any type of request for 2 curb cuts, the way the ordinance was drafted based on my understanding of your prior discussions, those would automatically come to the council. Staff we'd develop an application, whether that was part of the regular driveway one or a separate one. Those would be considered by you all. You would be the ones to make the decision. Once again, we're kind of looking for some direction, whether you want properties posted, do you want to consider it a public hearing, or is it just an agenda item where you consider it? There had also been discussion, as there is with a variance, which once again, this is obviously, not set. The council had previously indicated that you wanted to have whatever decision you made in the case of a 2 curb cut situation formalized in a written decision to avoid setting a precedent. I don't know if that's still something that you want to do. You could likely, if you didn't want to go through, variances have a certain legal context in them. You could also certainly just lay out your reasons in detail, in that section of the minutes is very detailed as well, if you don't want to do a separate legal opinion. Maybe not a legal opinion, but a written decision. Typically what we will do, whether like for a variance, they're obviously in the council meeting minutes, but whatever document you all approve obviously goes to the applicant. We also put a copy in the property file. So if it's 5 years from now and somebody wants to know why you did what you did, they don't have to go looking through the minutes. So I think that's the benefit of having some kind of written decision, is it just makes the historical record a little easier to find. But that's up to you all how you want to handle that.
Jim's comment is, do our decisions, is there an appeals process that we want to have out of our model?
If you all are the ones making a decision, I don't know who you would appeal to. Oh, no, but what I'm saying is, in a 2 curb cut situation, you are the decision maker. Staff doesn't have anything to do with it.
Well, I think
So-
the point was just in terms of, it wasn't necessarily a 2 curb cut situation. It's apply for a permit, the permit gets denied, on an appeal. Right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But there is a process.
Yeah, I think something for you all to think about, if the driveway permit application is being reviewed by the very standard the council itself adopted, you're essentially appealing your own decision. So I think that's a little strange to me. I'm not sure what the criteria would be for you all to ignore your own standard.
Well, that would be
At
like a
that point.
variance, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's true. That is a way of looking at it. You set the building regulations and those obviously come with certain, for lack of a better way of describing it, hardship standards, that there's something unique about the lot or the property. So I guess you could look at it that way.
the other thing I was saying, I'm sorry, but I just
Yeah.
last thought. The other thing I'm thinking is that a written decision and so forth would be good because essentially this is a permanent structure. I mean,
Yeah,
people don't expect to tear the driveways out maybe, but they would replace it with the same thing.
right.
So I would think that we would hold it to the same standards. Including a variance if necessary. Because at the end of the day, once we've done something, like you said, it's gonna be final, it's gonna go into their file and then that's it.
Repair and replacement.
Well, we can, that I haven't thought of yet. No, I'm talking about any appeals to the width or any other dimension that we've set, that we end up setting. And of course, the second driveway or circular driveway decision, whatever that's gonna be.
Yeah.
We're saying up to 20 feet. We're not saying it has to be.
Oh, it has.
Yeah, and something just occurred to me and I'm kind of going off memory. Basically, when we last talked about the draft ordinance, basically staff was not allowed to deny a permit without consultation with the council. So once again, any denial, you all would be a part of making the decision to deny. So I don't have a preference. I'm just saying that's how you wanted the draft ordinance to read previously. So there would be no staff denial of a driveway permit without your involvement.
Can I just bring us back, please, for a moment, if I might? Under attachment 2, there's a draft Garrett Park driveway standard. I assume that everyone has already read those. Everyone is fully up to date with what is currently in the draft driveway standard. Again, we are not passing an ordinance. We are simply looking to provide direction here. Currently, the direction is listed out on attachment 2 in the documents. It specifies with a minimum width of 10 feet and a maximum width of 20 feet. It also talks about an additional radius to allow up to 30 feet. This is what we are discussing.
Right.
And so what we are looking for on direction, again, there will be minutia that needs to be discussed further before this goes into the code. We will have several opportunities, but what I want to be able to at least have us consider and ultimately decide on is giving direction. I think one of the outstanding items here is the length. And when I refer to length, I'm referring to from the street, how far the concrete should be without a sidewalk, and with the sidewalk, do we want it to the sidewalk? That is currently what is in this standard. As it refers to the circular driveways, we have both, there will be 2 entrance points on a circular driveway. Both of those curb cuts need to follow the same language as is above.
Quick question about that though, but does that require this special exception or maybe a variance that we were just talking about? Right? Because that's a second, like, I guess when it comes to that issue, what problem are we trying to solve? I mean, if people want to add, I mean, I think of the Stewarts as that example. It was very natural for them to want to create a circular driveway out of their regular driveway. They should apply for that and it be approved, because if they indicate they're going to follow all the standards in here, like, does it need a separate process like we were just talking about? That just seems like overkill.
Yeah, what I understood, and once again, is that you all had, as part of your discussion, a lot of discussion about trying to be environmentally sensitive. Obviously, having adding more impervious surface could be viewed as not being environmentally sensitive. So that came from you all. That's
Yeah,
how you
I don't-
wanted to
I don't
handle it.
remember That portion of it, but I guess my
Yeah.
opinion would be treat a circular driveway or someone's desire to create a circular driveway as any other driveway and have it conform to the specifications of a driveway at the end, at the apron.
Mhm.
And not have it be not requiring people to come before us and justify it and all that.
That's my understanding, as long as both sides of the
Conf-
circular conform
Yes,
to
to whatever.
whatever we decide
Yeah.
on
Okay,
the length.
I just want to make sure.
Right.
So playing a devil's advocate for a moment here, what if I decide to build a circular driveway that isn't quite so circular? That's basically two driveways separated by 5 feet.
And I don't know if it's 5 feet, but having two separate driveways does exist in town.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
What I'm bringing up a point.
But
to
isn't
say-
there a standard for how close the driveway entrances can be?
I don't believe so. Not in the stuff we have here.
No, there's nothing that, there are some limits in the county zoning code about how much of someone's front yard can be impervious surface. I don't think we've come close to that. We try to keep an eye on it, but we're obviously not the administrators of the county zoning code, but they really have no involvement. So by default, we kind of need to look at it. So, I mean, I think Councilmember Deutsch is raising a good point. We're trying to figure out whether you're still where you were at in prior discussions, and I don't recall all the thinking behind it, was that you wanted two curb cuts coming before you. That's obviously your discretion to say that that's no longer the way you feel.
I'm thinking about this. And one concern I have, getting back to the environmental issue, is availability of sites for town trees, because the right of way, we are an arboretum. And if we do allow two curb cuts per property without any kind of review, we might over time severely limit the available space for town trees in the right of way. So I'm a little concerned about not having maybe I don't want to make it too hard,
Mhm.
because I think I was in the earliest meetings, one of the advocates for still allowing circular driveways, having had I own a very challenging property, and we ended up getting a permitted circular driveway. Because of the elevation change, we couldn't do a lengthwise driveway. But at that time, there was no problem. We got it. But I didn't want another resident who had a similar property to have, to be told no and no chance of any other difference. Seemed reasonable to me that some form of a variance process, I think we could have gotten through that with our property, given its unique characteristics. So I am a little concerned, though, from the tree perspective, especially if our assumption is that most of these driveways will be concrete or asphalt for the most part. So that's one point I wanted to say. Another thing that has concerned me all along, and I've raised it repeatedly, but we've never really articulated any actual solution language for it, is the fact that we're not at all really putting any kind of encouragement for for more porous and permeable materials to be used, because all of this concrete is just contributing to the runoff into the watershed. So I'm wondering if we would be open to taking a more radical step of saying that a concrete apron is not a starting point requirement if someone wants a curb cut, that they could propose a gravel driveway. They could propose something that's permeable. Maybe it requires some extra criteria or process, but that's not. And maybe they would have to sign that NDA to, protect the town if they're,
The hold harmless.
the hold harmless. But I do think that we really thus far have not provided any kind of encouragement for permeable water, for water infiltration to occur in the driveway. And we're really just encouraging more concrete. One reason why I bring this up, it really struck me. I went on the tour of the Kensington Historic District yesterday, and there are a lot of there's definitely a feel in those neighborhoods of being in an older time that you do not get when every driveway is concrete.
Mhm.
And I feel like we're quickly losing that feel in Garrett Park with all the concrete we're encouraging. So just really encourage us to think about allowing some of these more older materials to continue as long as we're not increasing actual risk to the town by, by using some sort of legal agreement mechanism.
Thank you so much. I thank you for kind of centering us because I think we all strive for that. On your first point on the trees, you're referring to additional trees, right? As you're
Additional and
because you
replacement.
wouldn't be able to take down an existing town tree.
We'd have to make that absolutely clear that they wouldn't have the right to have a circular driveway that requires the removal of a town tree.
I don't
So
think
that's
that,
one
I think
point.
that
For
that's
the
very,
damage of a town.
Or the damage of the town tree, right?
but is that not specifically delineated in our ordinances?
Well, I
that
think
you
we
cannot-
need to see the new language to make sure,
Okay,
for sure.
I'm
But I
pretty-
agree with you. I agree
right.
with you. We'd want that to be the outcome, for sure.
Sure. But you're referring to, because I know as liaison to the Arboretum Committee, I know that we're encouraging the planting of new trees, which I support 100%. That would be perhaps in that instance, right? If
Right, we'd
every-
be slowly taking away right of way and paving it over
Mhm.
and leaving less and less space for town trees.
It's a great point. I think and I would love to encourage any way that we can have more porous. I think that on the concrete side, we can limit the amount of concrete, right? We know that 2 feet is safe. If we want to make it 2 feet, that's a very small portion of concrete. The rest can be porous material.
But
How
why
we
does it have to be
extend that-
concrete? I mean, I just want to ask that very basic
Okay,
question. Why does it have to be concrete? Why can't it just be gravel?
I think our
3
engineer
letters,
is gonna-
ADA. We have to make sure it's going to be ADA compliant because remember, as part of ADA, everybody's driveway apron that connects to a sidewalk is also considered an on and off ramp.
Okay, but we don't have sidewalks on most streets.
Correct.
It's a minority of town streets that have sidewalks.
Yet, I'll put it to you that way, but nevertheless, we could obviously update them because that's what we do. When we did SRTS, safe routes to school, we basically went in and changed out a lot of driveways to bring them up to the standard that we wanted, including the apron and all that other jazz. And I don't really have a problem other than to say that from what I've heard from people I've talked to like MML or people like Jason, is that some of the pervious stuff is not very good for turning wheels, things like that. It tends to dig it up. So I would be fine with pervious. I think it's a great idea, provided 2 things. One is that it's approved by the engineer because they'll probably come out with newer, better products sometime in the future. And the second thing is that the homeowner has to maintain it, like vacuum it if that's what is
And
necessary.
it would stand up to snowplow.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but again, if they're signing a hold harmless clause and saying they're not going to come after the town if the town snowplow damages their apron and we notify them of the risk, why are we
Yeah.
over bureaucratizing perhaps their decision choice? Right now, there's an eclectic array of driveway aprons around town. And essentially what we're doing by pushing this concrete standard is we're saying concrete is our preferred choice and we're only going to allow other than concrete in exceptional cases. And I'm just asking us to consider maybe thinking about the fact that we are an old town and we didn't, we started out with dirt roadways and we're slowly looking more and more like
We don't.
a city suburb or, a city. Yeah, more urban.
So what I would propose is that we say, or engineer approved, a engineer approved pervious surface.
Yeah.
Then that way it takes it away from specifying anything. Basically, we can, ask.
And Jason provides a list of.
Right, Jason
Yeah.
provides a list or he looks at whatever is being asked and provides yes or no.
So I'm going to read this back to you. Where no sidewalk exists, the driveway apron must be constructed with concrete or an engineer-approved surface.
Right,
Yeah, and I can,
He's only going.
permanent.
Yeah,
Uh,
this question did get asked by you all before, and certainly I'm happy to circle back around. So obviously this issue's been out there for a while. So previously you all asked for me to follow up with Jason about permeable driveway aprons. Going back to the February memo, the town civil engineering firm does not recommend allowing permeable pavements in the right of way due to increased maintenance needs and possible failure. During repaving operations, there would likely be damage to the apron. I can certainly circle back around with him, but that's what Jason had said
Right.
a year
and-
plus ago.
And that's a very anticipated answer from an engineer. But the more I read that, the more I think about that old adage about the hammer, right? Like if that's the only tool you have, that's the one you're going to choose. The engineer is thinking about a structure failing. But does a curb cut to allow entrance onto a property have to be concrete? I'll take the ADA point for sidewalk access, but when there's sidewalk access, there's supposed to be actual sidewalk accesses, and they're separate from the driveways. We learned during SRTS that the driveways actually couldn't be considered legal access for people onto the sidewalks. They had to have it. We had to make sure that there were separate town pedestrian entrances to the sidewalk, separate from the driveways. Now, the driveways, if the owner is, in need of ADA access, they could provide that for themselves. The driveways are not town structures, and so we're not imposing the ADA on individual property owners, to my knowledge.
We, if I may, the issue that was raised by the town attorney is this came up relative to pavers. And if we were to allow pavers, that only certain type of pavers meet ADA accessibility standards. So it's where someone is already accessed the sidewalk and is using it to cross the portion of a driveway that is in a public right of way. We are legally responsible for not allowing things to be put in place that are not ADA accessible per the town attorney in that very limited situation.
Well, I'm not quite following. In which situation?
So if there is a sidewalk and
If there is a sidewalk.
if there is a sidewalk and the sidewalk obviously is going to be in a public right of way. And the issue came up specifically regarding pavers, that if we wanted to allow pavers, that the pavers had to meet certain ADA accessibility standards, because in that case, it is our right of way. We are permitting someone to put something in, and we have a responsibility to make sure that any pavers that are used meet ADA accessibility standards. So that's the only situation that I can think of where ADA comes into play.
So let me
So-
read this back.
So if the sidewalk, I just want to make sure I understand that. So if the sidewalk is adjacent to additional right of way, the whole right of way has to be ADA compliant?
It's the portion of the driveway, like I say, came up specifically regarding pavers.
Down.
But if we have constructed a public sidewalk which would inevitably be in our right of way, we have a responsibility to make sure that the surface that is used, because someone's going to be on a sidewalk crossing someone's driveway,
Right.
that surface has to be ADA accessible.
But that's the sidewalk surface that crosses the
The
driveway,
driveway.
not the whole right of way.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Thank
That
you.
is correct.
So I'm sorry. I thought I had it and right until the end. Are we saying that the sidewalk obviously needs to be ADA compliant? In the situation where there is a sidewalk, are we saying that the concrete or engineer approved permeable surface also has to be ADA compliant or not? Or not? Okay.
I heard not.
It's, if you look at sheet one of the Garrett Park driveway standard, you'll see under number 1, it talks about it, and I may have also misread it too, but it basically talks about you have to be ADA compliant where the driveway crosses the sidewalk.
Correct.
Simply the portion
Where the driveway.
Right.
Yeah,
The
sure.
sidewalk's gonna be used for both the driveway
that's-
and for
Yeah.
the sidewalk has to be ADA compliant until it passes through the other side, then the sidewalk.
Right. So if there's a sidewalk, then the homeowner could theoretically, if we allow it, pick their material for their apron, pick their material for the remainder of their driveway, even if it's in the right of way, as long as they don't disturb the sidewalk and leave it intact.
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
May I-
you just have to have a continuous accessible pathway, basically, when you're traversing the
This-
right of way.
This is great. I want to make a parenthetical point here that certainly we want to get this right and we want to deliberate as much as we can. There is a commensurate cost of not providing this direction. And again, there will be several steps afterwards, but what we have in place currently is a bit of a headache for not only the council and staff, but also for residents. So I think there is a commensurate cost that I do want to acknowledge. I'm going to read what we have currently. I'll be very brief, but this is what is currently on the table. Again, we haven't really focused in on the length. But where no sidewalk exists, the driveway apron must be constructed with concrete or an engineer-approved permeable surface, have a depth of 7 inches, and be at least 5 feet in length. Where a sidewalk does it, so that's the second bullet point. Where a sidewalk does exist, the driveway apron must be constructed with concrete or an engineer-approved permeable surface, have a depth of 7 inches, and extend all the way to the sidewalk. So that's the change from the
Well,
original.
does that may perhaps take care of the 5 foot. I mean,
Length?
right, because now you're
Now,
choosing an engineer approved surface.
But if
and-
there's no sidewalk, how long is the driveway apron?
5 feet as it currently stands.
So that's the question. Just leaving
But
it-
the apron can be an engineer-approved permeable surface.
But gravel is more than likely not engineer approved.
Yeah, do we
Like,
have,
when-
it would be nice to know what the engineer might approve.
Well, again, all we're looking to arrive at is a standard. I suspect that is it engineer approved or not will need to be case by case basis. If someone comes to us.
Like, well,
What I'm getting at is-
here for the engineer to approve it, what is the purpose of the engineer approval?
For me, it was to get something that's durable, it's gonna survive for some period of time. I mean, if you look at like Walter Kornberg's old driveway, somebody apparently paved over it. And I've also heard other companies, and I think we just talked about this, where turning of wheels, if people are making U-turns, if heavier trucks are backing in and out across that surface, could tear up the permeable surface. And so the thought was that we wanted something that may perform similarly to concrete that is not necessarily concrete. So if you came up with something that would meet the requirements where durability for going across it, turning, whatever, that was basically equivalent to concrete, then we would be fine.
I think Jerry's point was, what is the standard by which you get that imprimatur of approval? Is it
Right.
their engineer? Or is it our engineer?
It'd be our engineer, the town's engineer.
Mhm.
Right, but what is it we want the engineer, if we've already said they're going to hold the town harmless, do we want the engineer to approve it based on as a permeable surface, it's not going to allow water to undermine under the roadway? Is there going to be drainage? I mean, it's just unclear to me what the approval is based on.
Specificity.
I think that it will be encompassed in the engineer approving that, is not just, is it durable, but is it permeable to the extent that maybe it could cause an issue under the street, right? If it's permeable and then it's buckling the street, then we have another issue.
The snow plows
Mhm.
mess it up.
Mhm.
I thought that was the whole reason for the.
Right. But my point is still, if you're having the hold harmless signature required, why do we care if the snowplow is going to damage it? Because the homeowner has said, I don't care. I want my gravel. I don't care. I want my pavers. I understand your snowplow might nick it.
So you're saying that if I'm a homeowner and I don't want concrete at all, and I just want asphalt curbs, and the snowplows come and screw up the asphalt curbs, then as the homeowner, I have to repair.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I think the point, no, here's,
Well, we are talking about permeable, not asphalt, but
so just to be clear, I think that the idea is that what it, hold harmless on your property is one thing, but having the street buckle is another thing.
right. I mean, I understand
So I
that
think
if
that-
the engineer reviews it and says that, a permeable surface is going to somehow affect the stability of the roadway. Yeah,
Yeah.
we that could be a potential criteria that I could understand. But like if, we might also talk to some engineers that say the Rainscapes program, because sometimes road engineers still think about things just in the terms of laying concrete and asphalt.
As a son of an engineer, I can absolutely confirm that's true. What I'm going to do, any other thoughts on length?
Just to go back to the other thing for a second. One of the things I would be concerned with is that this hold harmless would really need to be something where it states that the homeowner, if we want to get rid of the engineer approval, we say that the homeowner has to repair it within a certain period of time, whatever that could be, and if not, they get fined X amount of dollars per whatever, because
You can't pour asphalt unless it's above a certain temperature. So the whole
Why? Are you
The as-
worried about affecting?
The asphalt plant shut down in November,
yeah, I
basically.
mean, I understand that material notwithstanding, but what I'm saying is that if they say they don't maintain a gravel driveway and the gravel tends to get out of there and it's made a big bump now, and so now trucks are bumping to get in and out of the driveway, it could cause problems with the street. And so if we've got something where we would want them to fix it, because also we're specifying this is what we want. Otherwise, there's no sense in us specifying what we want. We can say, put in 2 feet of concrete. And that's it. Whatever you do, you do, but we're trying to specify something. We're trying to say, this is how you need to interface to make sure that it's going to be durable and that the homeowner would have to replace it. I mean, it's kind of the same as the blocks, the pavers, but a little bit different. It's other damage, not just a snowplow.
Yeah, so one thing I just wanted to note, and I think Phil, you just hit on it. I think you need to balance how much flexibility you're providing and when at some point does this kind of become a meaningless conversation of setting a standard. I would say that the hold harmless things, just to everyone note, there is going to be legal cost if those are very broad. They are now. Basically, those are recorded in the land record. So it is a legal document prepared by the town attorney's office. The reason they are recorded in the land records is properties change hands. And so it's to make sure that as properties turn over, that a new owner knows that the town is not accepted for liability for something that is constructed on the property they are purchasing. So,
Paperwork closing, I mean, look,
yeah, good luck paying attention to that in the hundreds of documents one signs,
mean,
but
I think Geraldine's making a very good point about making sure we are exploring the most flexible and resident-friendly option for this that obviously protects the town and our roads, but doesn't for lack of a better term, over-engineer not just the look and feel of the town, but the flexibility residents have. And
And the
that's
cost
the
of it.
magic of that's what we have to hit on here is, and so, I don't know if concrete is the only, I have to take Jason Azar's word for it, that concrete is the only surface that is really, should be used here, or if, provided a homeowner accepts responsibility, for damage that may be caused, that there's any number of other surfaces that could be used.
yeah.
So,
this is-
And if they are somehow engineer approved, and I agree, we'd have to figure out what that means. It might eliminate your 2-foot versus 5-foot issue because they're using a material that has been approved by the engineers.
Yeah, so
You don't
asphalt-
have to worry about. I mean, presumably it's going to be the same material
All
for the
way to
entire
driveway.
driveway. If asphalt's one of them,
If it's cost effective,
Yeah.
that's one of the big issues. Concrete is more expensive.
Yeah, so back in February, one of the things that we included is that if you want to abandon the concrete standard, then one of the options was to, if that you wanted to allow residents to use asphalt, then our civil engineer recommended a minimum depth of 8 inches for durability. That was for asphalt. That 8 inches was determined based on the Montgomery County standard for a residential, primary residential road. He had some other,
There you go.
distance type of things. And then basically, if you were to allow even the 8 inches of asphalt, that there be a waiver of responsibility.
So
So there's options here. Obviously, there's been a lot of history. So I just want to make sure we're clear coming out of here unless you're scheduling another discussion of what you want.
one last thing for me, well, maybe not, but we have two standards here right now. We've got the town standard, we've got the county standard in front of us. The county standard are the first 2 pages after the permit. You've got
Yeah, that's
now
what,
the permit, then you've got
correct.
two MC county standards. And then we go to the one that was written specifically for us.
Yeah, so the county standards at this point, based on both prior discussions and prior actions, that is no longer in effect, and there's no reference whatsoever on our website to the county
You can
standard.
ignore the county
Yeah,
standard.
you can ignore
Those were
that because it's not
legacy.
in effect
Those
anymore.
were-
Okay, except that we do quote them in
Yeah,
our own documents. So
yeah.
my point is really that we make our own documents.
That's a good point.
We put in it what we want and we define what we want. We don't call out somebody else's standards that could change that we may not like. This allows us to have the flexibility to do pervious payments, short aprons, whatever else it is. But we put all that stuff in, except for some case where by some legal requirement, we have to put in, some particular verbiage. Other than that, I would say that we need to get rid of all the references to other standards or fix the reference, like I had said earlier, so that we don't have to worry about them changing all over the place.
So that's a great point. I'm looking at that now. It does say driveways shall be constructed according to the town in Montgomery County. I agree. If we're adopting our own standard here, there should be no reference because then we are no longer dependent upon a changing Montgomery County standard. I think that's a great flag.
That makes sense. Well, so after all of that discussion, getting back to your original question, John, that I've been resisting answering.
Correction.
I guess then I'd be more in favor of the minimum 2 foot that the engineer agreed to than the 5 foot to give maximum flexibility to residents. And I'm in favor of allowing for permeable materials to be that choice.
May I read something that I'm gonna ask for a motion and see where we are. And this does not have to be unanimous. I'm gonna remove the 5 feet to 2 feet. I'm going to read these very quickly. I know you guys are getting sick of me reading these. Where no sidewalk exists, the driveway apron must be constructed with concrete or an engineer-approved permeable surface, have a depth of 7 inches, and be at least 2 feet in length. Where a sidewalk does exist, the driveway apron must be constructed with concrete or an engineer-approved permeable surface, have a depth of 7 inches, and extend all the way to the sidewalk.
Should that be clarified to be town engineer?
Yep,
Yeah.
definitely.
And it did,
Or a-
not to overcomplicate things, but doesn't the depth, doesn't that differ if it's concrete versus asphalt?
Yep, certainly does.
The standard for concrete is 7, and then
And asphalt is
asphalt's 9,
8.
minimum.
I think it's 8,
Eight.
right?
And then we don't, and the permeable.
So you could also just say
Yeah.
the minimum specifications,
Have it,
and that's found in the application. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it doesn't have to.
Well,
spell it
do we
out.
want to be, yeah, that's a good point, but I wonder if and what if because if it's an engineer approved permeable, what if this is 20 years? Like I'm trying to put a standard in place that we can reference to in 10 years. In
Right.
10 years,
So-
there may be some sort of permeable surface that you only need 2 inches. It's like, yeah, it's like really, so it's a good point.
At the engineer approved depth.
There you go.
Thank you, Phil.
The town engineers.
Right.
At the town engineer's proscribed. What, I mean,
And that's for
building the
both
plane, we
versions?
fly it.
For both versions then?
Well, the,
with and without sidewalk?
well, the question is with a sidewalk right now, it has it all the way to the sidewalk, which in some cases is the.
That's really tough.
Right, we're talking about the depth, right?
We're talking about the depth.
It's turned. That's sort of plastic. Yes.
The last thing that I don't want to argue against myself here and be the last obstacle, but we are implying a higher standard for folks that have a sidewalk
Right.
right.
Right, but we are giving them more choices
We
in
are giving them
materials.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spare everybody from reading these again. I think what we have currently is a 2 foot length with all of the language, which
I would say a bit 2 feet.
be at least 2 feet in length.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the first two that I read out. Pavers, ADA compliant, 7 inches of. So I have to, okay.
Engineer approved depth.
Engineer approved depth. So it's the same language, concrete or a town engineer approved permeable surface with a town engineer prescribed depth. Currently on the circular driveways, I have, subject to both aprons, are fine following the requirements previously mentioned. Jerry Lee brought up a good point. Do we want to have that be an ad hoc discussion? People, or are we saying it's okay as long as you follow the above guidance?
I think Jerry makes a really good point. So I would be okay with, there being a clear and easy, mechanism to apply that where probably as part of that, you have to specify. Like we would want to look at how much right of way is going to be taken away. Is there a tree there? Right. I mean, that's sort of the point.
Right, because we had some language in an earlier version about the town manager being able to consider tree planting or protection of town trees as part of the criteria. We could maybe elaborate on that. Not necessarily tonight, figure it all out, but
Yeah.
have that be a consideration, and maybe we'll probably need to make it
Well,
clearer how
my
that
hope
gets
is any
considered.
of those, like, just to reduce the number of times folks have to gather up a bunch of materials and come before the council.
Right.
Present on,
Any other thoughts on circular driveways? Just so that we can, at this point, I'm looking for maybe a small step in direction of progress. I think we've made it.
Now, is that you will do 2 curb cuts next?
well,
That's what we're talking about.
Well, no, certainly 2 different things. There's a circular driveway, but then there's people at 2 different entrances. And that exists in this.
two
town.
different entrances not connected.
Correct.
So two side by side.
They could be side by side, yes.
driveways.
Sides of the property,
Mhm.
like 2 different. I know,
different-
yeah, I know this stuff.
Two different driveways that aren't connected, right? Because we're
Correct.
kind of circumscribing what the.
Well, that would be treated the same as a circular driveway, right? It's 2 cuts.
It's fine.
At the end of the day,
I just wanted to make sure that,
Yeah.
that we have language that
Yeah.
addresses that. So yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we address it. That's.
Right. With the consideration that we're not foreclosing the ability of the town to plant in the right of way, somehow word that in there eventually.
Okay. So let me read this once again. Let me just make sure that we are on board with the progress that we've made this evening. Where no sidewalk exists, the driveway apron must be constructed with concrete or an engineer approved permeable surface. Have a depth of 7 inches sorry, strike, have a depth of 7 inches at the town engineer's prescribed depth. 2 feet in length in the absence of a sidewalk, all the way to the sidewalk when it exists. The circular driveway, I'm going to put brackets around it for now. I'm also going to put brackets around repair and replacement, but I just want to entertain a motion, the direction of those two do we have, I'll entertain a motion just to adopt the 2 points of direction following driveway permitting standards. Do I hear a motion to adopt those 2? Do I hear a second?
Oh, okay. Did you say we're going to come back to repair and replacement?
We're going to come
Okay.
back to repair.
Make sure I heard correctly.
We're going to come back to repair and replace. We're going to come back to a little bit more specificity around circular, and to Phil's point, the double cut side by side.
And would this would be a motion to give direction to staff to draft up. I don't think it's really adopting until we see the language that we're adopting.
That's exactly what it is. We are giving direction now, and I just want to make sure that we are there. So that's the motion that
And we need a second.
we need a second.
Anyone?
I can't second my own.
Okay, I'll
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Barb, thank you for that. New business. Next order of business is any new business in front of the council. Councilmember Deutsch, you want to start us off?
Tough act to follow.
Yeah.
Quick thing, were we gonna discuss repairs only because?
And I thought we were going to discuss it now. I was-
Oh, you want to Well, we can discuss it now. We can certainly, and we can discuss the language around circular driveways. I was reading the room and I wasn't sure if,
Oh, no, I just meant the repair replacement because
Right.
last time I thought we had agreed that, because I had made some notes about it, only replacement will trigger the new standards. Maintaining and repairing would not trigger a permit.
but I think
And
that,
it would be grandfathered. That's what I had written in my notes from last. time.
as do I, but I think the delineation is what we're trying. What is a repair? What is a replacement, right?
Mm.
When does a
Oh,
repair
okay. So
become
like
re-
getting down to the definition
I
of.
can say I'm
repair versus
repairing
replacement.
my driveway and rip up the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Start again. So.
All right, well, then I misunderstood you earlier then. So I mean, I'm comfortable as long as we're still in agreement that that's the standard and they'll put forward language for us to consider how to delineate repair versus replacement.
Yeah.
We don't have to wordsmith that now. I'm okay with that.
Oh, sorry.
I just misunderstood.
Off driveway and the snowplow comes and hurts the curves. And I now want to repair it. You're saying that I can repair it again with asphalt?
Without a permit, right?
In the right of way as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, there is no, this was where you all left it is you wanted me to ask Jason Azar how would he make a distinction between repair and replacement? He said there really is no, and this was in the memo for tonight, there really is no engineering standard. So you all need to decide, and it sounds like if something is already, you will allow someone to replace in kind whatever is there, is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
That's the difference between repair and replacement, because I was thinking something like 25% of it has to be removed and replaced,
Yeah.
and that would be. And I just picked a number out of the air, pick whatever number you want, but why is
Yeah.
the percentage of the driveway, what percentage of the existing driveway or existing
Yeah,
apron?
I mean, I will just say that the review of a driveway, we charge $125 for a driveway permit application review as well as an inspection. This is becoming extremely complicated. I mean, I would really encourage you all. I think where you're headed, which is certainly your prerogative, please don't misunderstand me, but the concrete is going to come into play so rarely. Is this something you even want to permit? I guess is the question that I have for you. Do you want to even, for anything? I mean, it sounds like there's just a lot of desire to provide maximum flexibility. And there's just a point, practically speaking, that I think the upgrade to concrete is almost never going to happen, except when a new home is being constructed. And I think we had a little bit of this discussion back in February. So I would just ask you to think about that because the ordinance is becoming, and the standard is becoming extremely complicated. And I would agree with Mr. Cole. Part of this is to make it understandable. I think we're starting to have so many permutations that I'm not sure if we're really clearly telling residents to make it easy for them to decide what kind of contractor to hire. That's, once again, we'll be happy to do whatever you all wish. I'm just saying there's a lot of if you've ever done programming where it starts going off into if-thens, and that's becoming pretty complicated. But we're happy to draft whatever you want.
I mean, my concern is that if you got a big pothole in your driveway and you decide to tear out that bad area and you repair it,
Does that trigger an
is that
upgrade?
gonna trigger an upgrade, even if it's in your driveway, not necessarily the apron?
Yeah, so I would say anything that in the past, anything that was outside of the right of way, we did not regulate at all. They weren't even required to get a permit if there was no work being done in the right of way at all. Because we don't regulate that. It's on private property.
Okay, and then as far as the apron goes, if we look at permeable surface,
That's in the right.
that's in the right of way. So then the question is, or even like you have a truck drives over the curb, and we've seen this before.
It just happened a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? And so the question is, I've got a non-conforming apron. They drove over the curb while delivering a load of wood or whatever. And all they've got is like 2 feet that I need to fix. Does that mean I have to upgrade to the latest standard? Or can I say, oh, it was only a certain percentage of this apron?
Are you-
I can repair it?
Are you talking about the town curb?
Well,
'Cause
town curb,
right.
the town curb or how it flares, you know.
Yeah,
Transition from driveway to curb. I'm talking.
right.
about the
Yep.
transition area.
Okay.
So I think we're going to take baby steps here. I think what we're going to do is delineate that, Phil, to your point on what triggers a repair versus a replacement, because I think it's important.
Yes.
Barb, your point is very well taken as well. At some point, if you say you could do this or this or this or this, then you might as well just not.
Yeah,
fully-
yeah. I mean, it may just be a case that you don't want to regulate work in the right of way.
Right, right.
I mean, that it's not something I would recommend, but it's certainly a policy just choice that you all could make.
Yep, understood. Councilmember Deutsch. Sorry, Phil, please.
No, I was gonna say, just to Jim's point, I'm trying to delineate something so that we don't end up with people having opinions of, oh, well, that's too big, you gotta replace the whole thing, or, oh, yeah, go ahead and replace it. And it takes some of the guesswork out of it because you can do some math if you needed to. There's some standard to point to say, yeah, you're too big, you gotta go ahead and replace it, even though it's gonna cost you $3,000 versus 300 to use some Sacrete and take
Yeah.
care of it, you know?
And I would encourage simplicity on that, so it's unambiguous. Chris?
Well, that's a good segue. Unambiguous. So this memo I put together, it originated with some ongoing confusion amongst the CA about and staff about what fees the CA was exempted from and which they're expected to pay when they rent town hall. And as I kind of dug into that and asked a bunch of questions of staff, I raised some questions of my own about the town hall rental policy. And mostly centered around kind of the alcohol and piano fees that I've never quite understood. And also just a desire to see if we can't simplify this process for everyone, avoid any unnecessary restrictions, that some of which, there doesn't seem to be any real record of how and why they came to be. So I won't go through the whole thing. I'll trust everyone took a look. I will say, dating back at least as far back as 1968, there was a prioritization of civic groups and individual town residents for the rental of town hall. That has been a mainstay since 1968. Primarily those groups being exempt from paying a rental fee. Now, there is some ambiguity that enters the picture with the way it's worded in some of those policies and even the current resolution. I'm going to jump, unless people have questions about what's written here, down to the recommendations, because when I looked at all this, and again, I want to add, some of the confusion amongst particularly the CA stems from inconsistent application of the rental policy that predates our current staff. Our current staff has done a lot of really good work to try and formalize and make consistent how these rental policy is applied. But there remains some ambiguity, and you all saw some of the email back and forth. Even in those emails, we saw things like, well, I think what they meant by this was, phrases like that, which tell me it's not totally clear. What exactly are category two groups exempt from? What are they not exempt from? So whether it's now or later, once town hall renovation's done, although I think there's reasons to maybe address this now, I would propose the following recommendations. And the first one doesn't necessarily have to do with exemption. We have an alcohol permit requirement and a piano permit requirement. So when you're renting town hall, no matter what category group you're in, if you indicate that you are going to serve alcohol, you have to pay a $50 alcohol permit fee. If you say you want to play the piano, you have to pay a $50 piano playing permit fee. We couldn't find any record of where the piano permit came from or why it was implemented. And the alcohol requirement seemed to me to pose no real benefit because the town already prohibits alcohol sales and renters already have to acknowledge they're not going to serve alcohol to minors. So it just seemed unnecessary. I don't think there's a major financial windfall coming our way from people paying these fees. And as far as the piano is concerned, I look at that as a community piano that should be played, and we shouldn't try to dissuade people from playing it who want to play it. Obviously, it needs to be maintained. Obviously, there's certain, if you damage it, that's going to, come out of your security deposit or elsewhere. But I think we want people to play the piano. So to me, those are just two things that somewhere along the line got inserted into our policy, and I think only get in the way of a smooth process for renting town hall. The other issue, so the second recommendation is I think we need to clarify what category two groups are exempted from. So category two groups are exempt from all fees associated with the rental of town hall. This is currently, we believe they're exempted from the rental fee, not the alcohol permit or the piano permit. And I think there's some ambiguity about the security deposit, which we can talk about. And then staff noted that one of the difficulties they have is taking reservations by phone, by email, and then there's an online form. And it becomes a little tricky to just reconcile everything and keep a clean data record. And so in the interest of making their lives a little easier and keeping cleaner records, requiring these reservations be made online, noting that staff would make themselves available to assist folks who are unable to use a computer or don't have access to a computer. But that we've created
tells the staff to reserve it, they should be able to go online and reserve.
Exactly. Yeah. But kind of formalizing that. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm interested to hear what others think. But I do think it's worth cleaning this up a bit. And I think certainly, the CA is the example that comes to mind, but other groups, I think, are interested in knowing exactly what they're exempt from and what they're not, and knowing that it's being implemented consistently to all categories of groups.
I would say that if there's no county health requirement that we take a permit for the alcohol, I would agree. Let's streamline that and get rid of it. On the piano, I don't think we need to charge a fee, but I do think asking the question and requiring a permit for planning to play the piano might be worthwhile just to protect the piano from being just kind of during an energetic party, the cover being pulled off and being played without care. I think it does need to be protected. And so just kind of making sure that people know in advance that they have to request permission to play the piano just puts the renters on guard that the piano is special and to be treated with care. But I don't think we have to charge the fee. So that could simplify that.
What's interesting is in the 1969 report that the Citizens Committee for the Management of Town Hall as a Civic Center submitted, there is a note that about the piano that permission to use the piano requires a special arrangement. That meant, but I think that's getting at what you were getting at.
Yeah, that, I think that way you check a box if you're going to use the piano. We know the cover comes off. So if we see there are 14 keys missing when we go back, then we have an idea that it was them. I want to acknowledge, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for the work that you've done. The staff has been put in a really difficult situation because they have been kind of consistent in their application, but there have been, previous to Barbara and her team, there have been other standards that were applied. And I think that once that happens once, then it's very easy to say, well, you never used to do that. So I want to applaud the staff and their consistency in kind of applying the standards. Chris, your work, the relationship between the Citizens Association and our staff here in Garrett Park is so incredibly critical. And I think that this work that we're doing here kind of acknowledges the work that's done on both sides. Again, I don't have a vote here. I'm not even sure if we're looking to solicit a vote, but I think that anything that streamlines and makes it more user-friendly, while at the same time making it easier for staff to keep track. Now we have a single portal online with exceptions, of course. It sounds like a win-win to me.
As I understand it, it requires council resolution to change the policy. So if we come up with some recommendations, and if we get to alignment on some of these tonight, we could have a draft presented at the next council meeting.
Okay, good.
Do we have any concerns for making sure that it's left clean and put back together after an event? Or who's?
So there's a security deposit, and there's a lot of language in the rental agreement about. Well, so that is an area that I think we could have more clarity on as well. So category, let's see, it's within category 2 groups are exempt from the rental fee and are only required to pay a security deposit if the event lasts longer than 6 hours. I believe that's the currently in the resolution. Barb, you can correct me if I'm wrong, in the current policy. That has been a somewhat, well, I won't say, I don't know how often it's flared out, but
our read of the policy is that all groups should post a security deposit because it's designed to address any damage. I do know that Jeanette, who handles most of the things, had given me a long laundry list of circumstances under which we find damage. And we have had damage that was done. I mean, it was cleaned up by our maintenance staff. From one of the fee exempt groups. It took 2 employees a total of 90 minutes to clean up what was left. So that I would encourage you all to keep it. That's obviously your choice. One of the challenges we have is when we have back-to-back rentals, like on a weekend. That typically we'll hear about it from one of the renters. That's how we learned about the issue with the fee exempt group, because when the renter showed up, they took photos that were time-stamped and emailed them because they didn't want to be blamed. So that becomes a problem. Sometimes we hear about it from, the renter the next day. If it's a rental during the week, the maintenance team makes a point of checking town hall the following morning, and basically we'll let the office know if they find it's not left in good repair. Then we follow up with the renter. I think, a discussion for another day. But I know Jeanette has some interest in getting council direction on what do we do when those situations happen and the building is not left in good repair, whether that's by a fee exempt group or an actual renter. What's the consequence of that? But I would probably, given the lateness of the hour, just stick to the issues you're most concerned about. And presumably the town hall rental policy will be revisited when we're under construction anyway.
Are there rentals that are less than 6 hours? I wonder where the
Kayla may know. I think so, but Kayla may know.
Here's a yoga class here.
So we have a handful of classes that are recurring renters who are less than 6 hours at a single shot. However, I will say Tai Chi meets weekly, yoga for a long time at weekly. There's been some ongoing stuff on the instructor's end. She has not been booking with the same consistency as she was in prior years. Music together,
Are those category 2 groups?
so those are not category 2 groups.
Okay.
Looking at the category 2 groups, I'm thinking Music Hall was in here for more than 6 hours when you factor in setup, the actual event, tear down, that was more than 6 hours. They posted a security deposit. A number of women's club events, I want to say the caroling with Santa, when you factor in cleanup time and everything, does tip over 6 hours.
Are they renting it for more than 6 hours?
They are off.
I assume you have to specify the times. That's how you assign the fee.
So when they go online to rent through the portal, they might select that we want to have access to the building starting at noon.
Right.
And they'll select however many hours they want. If they say we'll be done and out by 8 p.m., that will come through on their reservation portal. The way our current portal is structured, because the vast majority of renters are private renters, we don't have a ton of category 2 groups that go through the portal. It is set to default. You cannot push through your reservation unless you select the appropriate security deposit for your rental fee status.
But if it's under 6 hours,
So,
you wouldn't have to pay one, according to this.
so according to this, we could break it out. Where we kind of run into a hiccup is like looking at the CA's preparation for 4th of July. They technically have a multi-day reservation where it starts
Right.
Friday, June 3rd, runs through the 4th, runs through the 5th. We don't necessarily in this policy fully address of kind of how we're doing that. Per the policy, anything over 6 hours for category 2 should have a security deposit.
Right.
The relative infrequency with which category 2 groups book events tends to lead them booking a 6 or more hour event. Because again, you have to factor in not just the actual event time of when you all are here caroling, but also the setup, the breakdown. We look at it as how many hours do you want to have exclusive access to town hall?
Okay,
And
that-
if that exclusive access is more,
Right, but all I'm saying is, and particularly if we're gonna move all online,
Mhm.
I mean, the way it's stated in the current policy is the
so
reservation for category 2 events shall not exceed 24 consecutive hours. That probably needs to be fixed too, because they have it for the 4th of July for longer.
Mhm.
For events longer than 6 hours, excluding setup and cleanup, a refundable security deposit equal to the category 3 rental fee is assessed per event day. Yeah.
So are you suggesting, I just want to make sure that I'm tracking, given the late hour, I will admit I'm not at my sharpest.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that we keep that provision of if it's less than
I
6?
just want to make sure it's clear for everyone involved.
So I'm going to offer kind of a proposal. I would say if people have access to town hall, they should have a security deposit on file, whether it be 1 hour or 6. Okay, I'm seeing some head noddings. When we come back next month with a draft resolution, I think we will try and clarify of any rental, regardless of length, whether it be 1 hour or what have you. Accidents happen, is what I always like to say. We don't suspect malice, but we also know gravity, clumsiness, sometimes things happen.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I think that's a pretty
I think
simple
it makes
approach.
sense.
And for the town groups, they're renting on a frequent basis, so they could just keep one
Keep
on
one.
file. Yeah, that's what they do.
That is what they do. It's what we've really worked with a lot of our groups and consistent renters to do is have one on file, work with us to roll over. Jeanette's made updates in recent weeks to the online portal so that a group, music together, the children's music classes is a big one. They've got one on file with us so they can select in the portal, hey, you have our security deposit. Jeanette maintains a list. So if someone thinks there's a security deposit and there isn't, we can catch it, flag it and say, hey, we do actually need a security deposit from you. But a lot of these groups have settled into rhythm of we have something from them. A lot of them have done it digitally. A handful have done checks. Following guidance from our auditors, we kind of asked them to replace the check every 6 months, just because any longer than that, a number of banks will not allow us to deposit it if there's an issue. So I think that addresses the security deposit
I
concern.
mean, I would
Reverend-
defer to you all on the best way to get, maintain, and apply the security deposit.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's, I mean, so alcohol permit, piano permit.
I don't think there's a reason for it.
Well, I would like to bring up two things. Let me first start off with piano permit. I understood, I could be wrong, that the piano permit was because the piano got tuned every time it was used. And this covered that. I may be wrong.
So in the approximately 4 years that I've been here, my understanding is that we've had the piano used so infrequently that we've settled into a once a year, as close to the musicale as possible. For those of you who were here over the weekend, we had the piano tuned on Thursday, as I was sharing with Councilmember Bennett before the meeting got started. Our maintenance staff did flag to Barb and I that at some point over the weekend, the piano was damaged. There is a humidifier that is actually under the piano cover. The electrical cord that connects it and keeps it running has damage. You can see the kind of copper. The guys are figuring out if we can repair it with electrical tape or if we need to look at repairing it. Based on the frequency with which the maintenance folks ran into folks for the musicale, we think during the kind of repeated movements that might have contributed to it. But that also speaks to kind of why we ask everyone to have a security deposit on file. We're hoping it's going to be a simple fix with electrical tape, but I will say this, that's not my area of expertise. I would probably electrocute myself, and I will defer to our maintenance staff on whether we can do a simple repair or if we need to contemplate a full replacement.
So, okay, so the really, is it the piano fee? Well, I guess it's a fee, so therefore it's not a deposit. So, I mean, is there any basis? Like, do we know where this came from?
When it was a player piano back in 1950, no.
Perhaps it was getting tuned more frequently in the
That could
past,
be.
but now it is about once a year.
So it doesn't really, I mean, we don't really, and we don't ask the staff to move the thing around, or I guess if we do, it's not a big deal.
We have defaulted to a posture of generally folks who are using the piano or using it for a weekend recital situation where staff is not available to move it. And so that is kind of left up to the renter. There have been very, very limited instances that I'm aware of. I'm talking less than 5 in 4 years, where someone has rented both the Friday and the Saturday, in part to ensure that staff could theoretically be available to help on Friday, position piano. That happens incredibly infrequently. I believe in previous conversations where we looked at town hall rental fees in terms of income to the town in the context of the renovation, we specifically called out the relative infrequency with which people are asking to use the piano. I don't have that figure in front of me, but we can try and look at it and get it out to you via email this week. I do believe it has been something like less than 15 uses of the piano in a calendar year, potentially even lower than that, but I don't want to tilt too far one way or the other.
So I don't have a problem with getting rid of it. I'm going to switch now to the alcohol fee for a second. And I guess several questions I have, but the first one is, where did it come from? Like, is this a legal requirement that the county puts on us or the state puts on us or some other thing of that nature?
So Councilmember Schulp was asking about the origin of the alcohol fee. I have very limited information about the alcohol fee. I know at one point we were looking into the origins and it seemed to be some setup where we are a municipality, but authority for alcohol permitting falls with the county, and that's where it gets a little.
So kind of to add to Kayla, just if I were to just take a guess, and that's what it would be, alcohol can tend to make people a little messier, so that might be part of it. So the county basically has regulates alcohol if it is being sold. Now, I will say, I think we had one situation where I think someone was being creative because if someone is accepting donations, and it's for alcohol. That is also regulated by the county. So if you're buying a commemorative glass or something like that, and then you're getting free alcohol, the county would consider that to be a sale. So I'm guessing,
$50 or $1 for dinner and dinner includes wine and beer.
I'd have to ask because that specific question has not come up. But the county has a fairly broad construct in terms of what constitutes a sale. So we did have one group who said they were accepting donations, but it wasn't for the alcohol. And I think that was likely an attempt to get around county regulation. But I think we're just assuming, as Kayla said, that some of it may have been, we wanted to know if alcohol was being served because of more trash, more whatever. And part of it, I think, is that we do, I think in my opinion, at least we have a responsibility to ensure that people using our facilities or property are abiding by county law.
Money and the.
No.
No, it's.
No, I think it wasn't more of an awareness of how the property was being used. That's a guess. Jeanette is our
Yeah.
documents expert and has read more documents than I've even read probably 1/10 of. So I don't think she's come across it clearly, but certainly Kayla and I can follow up with her tomorrow.
If you
Okay.
could, because the same question would apply to, for instance, the swimming pool association.
Yes, and they actually, so they have a number of events where obviously they basically just, people are members, I think, kind of to Lisa's point, and they throw a number of events where alcohol is served, but they are not charging.
Right.
They're just, so what the pool association has done regularly during, I'm the longest tenured person in the office, has always come to us, basically paid the fee, because there's not really one specific to the pool, but it is town property, and they have paid that fee. They do have another event where they apparently are selling alcohol. There's a fee. They have, with no objection, gone to the county. We get notified because as the property owner, typically it's me, it has been Kayla, I think on occasion. The county will route, in that case, the special event alcohol license to me generally, and we have to sign off on it as a property owner. So, yeah, I think if there was a history here before I started, Phil, but I think because there wasn't a specific policy related to the pool, but it was town property, it was treated similar to town hall. And so they have just paid the alcohol fee for their non-fee events, basically.
So I just did some quick Googling. And it appears that if the event is open to the public, that a county alcohol permit is required. But what I'm wondering is, in our past practice, if we're collecting a fee, are we then, on behalf of the entity, sending that to the county? What's happening here?
We do not. So right now, if someone indicates that alcohol will be served, there's a series of questions that we will ask, basically, because we could not file on someone's behalf, just like we could not file for a special food event permit, because what they do for alcohol licenses, I've seen it a lot with other places I've worked in Montgomery County or elsewhere in Maryland, because I've had my own staff going before the liquor board in some cases. You have to, if you're the one serving alcohol, it's incumbent on you to show how you are going to keep alcohol from being served by minors to minors. We would not be capable of doing that because we don't know how someone's going to do that.
They acknowledge, they acknowledge they won't serve it to minors. That's
Yep.
part of the thing.
Yeah, but usually you have to set up some sort of access points. Like this comes up especially for like the Brewfest. Parks are more problematic than buildings. But the applicant is going to have to show how they have control points. Like I worked for another city in Maryland. I volunteered my time it was a city-sponsored festival. We would check people's IDs and I would put a band on them. And so if they were seen wandering around, that was sort of what we showed to alcohol control, that basically we were checking IDs and there were access points. So,
Jerry, any other thoughts that it looked like you were going to say something else?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's perhaps a little confusing that the town is charging a permit fee, when really what we should be doing is educating. And it sounds like the education is happening, but rather than us collecting a fee, unless we think that the education justifies our own fee, we should be providing the education that if it's a public event and not a private event, they don't have to apply for
Right.
this county, from what I just read. But if it's a public event, provide them the information and the contacts for applying for
I would
the
assume, yeah,
required
select,
county
do you plan
permit.
to serve alcohol? Yes, drop down.
Yeah.
If you're doing X, Y, and Z, you need.
Right, and ask them
link
to
the
certify,
permit and-
yes, and ask them to certify that they will comply with all county regulations. I think that would be reasonable.
Yeah. And
To educate and require
yeah,
certification.
and typically what we do, because most of these are going to be like 1-day special event permits, we basically give them a link to the county special event application.
Right, so it doesn't seem like it's necessary for us to have our own separate alcohol permit.
Chris, do you have everything that you need? I think we're going to introduce this next month. It sounds like what we're tacking towards is, and it sounds like we're unanimous across the board. Somebody jump in if I'm inconsistent here, but for category 2 groups, the piano fee and the alcohol fee will be waived. For the security deposit, I think we're still
I think-
talking
I
that
think
through.
I'm suggesting, and I think we're in agreement, that for any group, there is no alcohol.
No alcohol group,
We're
no,
just
there's
doing
no
a
alcohol
waiver.
fee, no piano fee, period, irrespective of category 2. Category 2 are not paying rental fees.
Right.
Where are we right now on
I
the
think we are requiring a
security deposit?
security deposit for any renter. and
Including,
Recurring renters can put a security deposit on hold with the office in perpetuity.
including category 2?
Including
Okay.
category 2. We have a number of category 2s who have already put it on
regardless of
file
the
with us.
duration of the event.
Right.
They already have it on file with us.
A number of category 2 groups already have security deposits on file. So the Garrett Park Nursery School has one on file. They'll periodically reach out to us for fundraising, event access. We have a security deposit on file. We work with them. We have a number of scouting groups who fall under category 2. The scout troops that we work with have security deposits on file, no muss, no fuss, very easygoing about getting things booked. So there have only been a handful of category 2 groups where getting a security deposit is something we have to do each time. And sometimes that's been kind of going back to that inconsistent past practice of trying to go, we're not trying to go after you for previous rentals, but we are saying to be consistent moving forward.
Do you-
My one question for kind of council at large, we do have a number of upcoming rentals on the books, some of which have alcohol or piano fees that have already been paid for. Assuming that we can bring forward a resolution in July, assuming council is meeting in July, because I know that's a question. But the resolutions that you adopt can go into effect immediately. Is council open to the idea of if there is a reservation on the books, so let's say it's a bridal shower, they've indicated they're serving alcohol, they've paid that fee. Their event happens after the resolution goes into effect. Is it council's desire that we refund that fee? How do we want to handle those kind of transitional?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That may not go into the actual resolution document. That may just be in the staff memo, but I do want to make sure that we've touched on that so that staff is not left going, we're sorry, you booked before and no one's kind of on board with refunding it. So
So if we're removing the alcohol permit, are we also still requiring them to answer the questions, right? If alcohol will be served, because it is a liability issue and they
I
need to
think-
recognize.
Right, I
That's
think
right.
we need to
Yeah.
ask.
So I think the desire would be, and we can, I'm happy to, Kayla, work with you on the tech side of things, is that if you indicate
Yeah.
alcohol will be served, you have to, one, acknowledge you won't serve it to minors and apply by all applicable laws or
Yeah.
whatever. And then two, you would get a description of when you might need a county
Sure.
event
Mhm.
and a link.
That's for all groups?
For public.
I think that's.
I think for all
All groups,
rentals,
yeah.
yeah.
Could
That
I
makes sense.
make a suggestion with regard to this? Can we just eliminate, like, do a separate resolution or something that eliminates the alcohol permit, period, across the board with all the same information we've just done? But we're just gonna say, we're eliminating it for everybody for anything.
His arms.
John, you have a resident who really wants to give input.
Well, yeah, exactly. Swimming pool, I mean, maybe there'd be exceptions, but I don't know. I'm just thinking of some people be like, oh, well, I don't have to, if I have alcohol in the, if I've got alcohol in town hall, I'm scot-free, but if I walk outside of town hall, now all of a sudden I gotta apply
It's
for
more
alcohol.
business.
Yeah, let me just interject for a second. Ordinarily, we have a protocol where we don't call on residents. However, in lieu of the fact that I see the blood is rushing down from your outstretched arm, would you like to, did you have a point, Mr. Cole?
Hi, Jim Cole, Rookie Avenue. I can help on the piano fee, and I have a suggestion about the alcohol fee. So the Garrett Park Jams group that met here bi-weekly for 18 years did not pay the piano fee, but had permission to use the piano. That was under the aegis of the CA. On the alcohol fee, I have been involved in renting this town hall countless times, and I can tell you that the $50 fee is a strong disincentive for people to include alcohol in their function. And if you want to minimize damage to town hall and minimize raucousness at events at town hall, you will keep the $50 fee collected by Garrett Park. That is my suggestion.
Thank you,
Well,
sir.
that is illuminating. That was, I just want to clarify for 18 years you were renting under the auspices of CA, not being asked to pay the piano fee.
That is correct. And
That's
we
a
didn't.
piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and I was on an ad hoc committee about 15 years ago that set a lot of these policies.
Yeah.
And at that time, we believed that the $50 fee was because the county required it.
Right.
But I'm telling you that it is a good disincentive that will preserve this building a lot better than if you get rid of it.
Point taken.
So what are we,
I'm pro raucousness.
pro Raucous, what are we tacking towards? Are we,
I
is
think
there
I
anything
have
that,
some clarity.
Okay.
I think, and I'll just do it real quick. I think we're tacking towards removing the piano fee for all renters,
Mhm.
removing the alcohol permit fee for all renters, maintaining those, what we just talked about.
The questions
question.
and the education.
Requiring a security deposit for all rentals. Is that right? Regardless of duration,
Yes.
but also noting that that can be held, groups can hold that on file. They don't have to submit it each time. They can work with staff to hold it on, keep it on file.
I offer one suggestion. If alcohol is going to be served, could you require an increased security deposit to address his point?
Here's where I come down on this.
By the
I realize
$50.
I may be out on a limb here. And maybe this is naive and too precious, but we trust each other. We're a community. We talk about it all the time, right? And part of the reason I think the CA got a little rankled was this idea that they couldn't be trusted with the great responsibility of having an event in town hall and cleaning up after themselves. The security deposit, I think, is $300 for category 2.
So no. The practice we inherited from prior staff was if we required a security deposit from a category 2 group, it was set at the same rate that a resident would get. So the security deposits we have for category 2 groups currently are $125, which is the resident rental rate. If council sees value in perhaps saying a higher security deposit for events where whatever happened, that might take a little finagling on our end in the back office. If we, let's say, have a GPNS $125 security deposit, but they say, hey, we want to do a wine and cheese paint and sip night to really drum up funds for our next semester kind of scholarship, we might then have to go to some, hey, council's new policy is if you're serving alcohol, your security deposit as a category 2 group is
But
$200.
then you're just putting the alcohol permit fee back in.
And
I
that's,
think like, to me, I think if it becomes an issue of raging parties, that cause a lot of damage, but I just don't see that as, I just would like to believe that we can trust our community and others to rent this place and be responsible.
Groups to have community events in our community, assets. That's the whole point of being in a community.
I
But I
will,
do think Phil had a good point that if we're gonna abolish the alcohol permit, we should do it for all Garrett Park events, not just in the town hall.
I would just ask that that be a separate, that we kind of
Okay.
clear this
Yeah,
up. and
let's
then
keep
do
it
that.
focused on.
But I mean, I'm open to,
Well, if we could just draft language, we could do it at the same time. That's all I was thinking. Because if
Chris,
we
where
do
are
that
we?
one first, we basically just like it's done, you don't have to worry about for the rental thing. And the language would, could just be pretty simple, just abolishing the fee.
I would be happy to prepare a draft with other staff members and Councilmember Deutsch if he has time to contribute. I do want to say that given that the pool, which is the only other kind of organization that we're aware of outside of town hall that sells alcohol on town property, the sale of the alcohol would still trigger that 1-day county special event
Sure.
permit. So I want whatever language we put forward to be clear of, we will exempt you from this fee where we can. We as a town have no authority to exempt you from the county. Please continue to be
Right.
excellently compliant. I will also say that we do have a number of folks who are not town residents who do rent town hall and who serve alcohol. I think one of the most consistent rentals that serves alcohol is actually put on by someone who is over in the estates. I would not like to be quoted on that. I don't have the data in front of me. But I do just want to say I know Garrett Park trusts Garrett Park. How much do you trust Garrett Park Estates? How much do you trust Silver Spring? Is there anything where you want to delineate that?
We have a different fee for resident renting versus non-residents renting, right?
That is correct.
So
I'm saying more in regards of the alcohol fee of acknowledging community trust. If there's any kind of desire to be more concerned with folks who are from out of town and who may not view town hall as a precious
I would say
resource.
They're paying $600 to rent and $600 security deposit. It's quite a bit. I
That's
guess
actually
Garrett
one of
Park
the
Estates
lowest
might get a
market-
Slightly reduced fee, $300 and $300, but
So Councilmember Deutsch, that's actually one of the lowest market fees that you can get. So
good.
cool. But I appreciate it.
address it after the town hall.
So Chris, you're going to work with staff, is that right? We're going to introduce
Yeah.
something in July. Is there anything else we need to move to the next point? Unless anyone else has any other thoughts?
I don't think so.
You good?
Yep.
Okay. So moving on, this is the hiatus that we were talking about. So we take a 1 month, each summer, take a break from meeting to recharge, relax, everything else. Typically it's done either July or August. I think that Ken brought up a point about making sure that time sensitive issues are addressed. One of the things that I feel is a priority is that we don't have things that are holding us up, whether it's town hall or Cambria Field or the dog park or anything else. So that's your point is very well taken on that. What we have now is we have a couple of time sensitive issues that we actually have to address in July, is my understanding. Barb, correct me if I'm wrong on that. So I think that, again, the most important thing is to make sure that we're not waiting 30 days to address something that is time sensitive. If that does come up right now, I know there are time sensitive issues that need to be addressed in July. We've got all the bids that are coming in for Cambria Field on the 18th. We need to finalize who that bid is going to in July. So that would necessitate us meeting in July. So that would mean that our summer break would be August. Again, if there's anything that is, and there very well could be, if there's something being held up for town hall or any of the other projects that we have, I will call a special meeting, even if it's 10 minutes just to approve something. But I think right now the best month is August for us to take our break, unless anyone has any thoughts on that and would prefer July. I think just because we do have a couple of sensitive things in July, I would prefer August.
Was there one thing that came up earlier that is happening in August?
I
It
think
was, perhaps I think there might be some town hall decisions, but we thought most could be handled by the mayor and the
Okay.
design committee.
Yeah. And if it's something needs to be handled by the council, then I'll make sure that we call a special meeting. Yeah.
Just for the record, last year, we didn't hold a we didn't hold a regular town council meeting in August, but we actually did meet. We held a special town hall work session, if I remember right.
Yep.
So if we needed a work session, we could just pick a
Right.
date that was more convenient given people's vacation schedules.
Absolutely. The last item is alternatives for Cambria Tennis Court area mitigation. Barb, I think you wanted to walk us through those.
Yeah, so you probably recall back in March, you received a presentation from the chair of the Parks Advisory Committee, kind of updating you on their community engagement. There was a slide at the very end of their presentation asking that something be done to the area of I'm going to loosely call them tennis courts. And this also was briefly discussed at the meeting last month, and staff was asked to bring back information. So I think everyone's probably
Can
aware.
I make one clarifying?
Sure.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think this is connected to some of the feedback we received yesterday and today. When PAC presented to the council their findings from their community engagement, they closed with two recommendations. And I think it's really important to note the first recommendation was explore interim options to remediate the court. Explore. And so I just want to get that context out there, and I'm happy to respond to the emails we received, but I view what you all very helpfully put together as that exploration,
thank you.
not as we'll choose one of these three options and do it. This is what they asked us to do. We agreed with their recommendation. So this is the result of that.
We should tell them.
Yeah, no, I plan to.
Yeah, so I did want to note for the record, I'm not privy to other communications. I received one today that was forwarded to you, so.
There was another one too. I thought it was.
Yeah, I'm not
maybe
aware of that.
But I'll.
Yeah. No, if things are sent to the mayor and council email address, staff is not part of that
Okay.
group, so we would not have seen
Okay.
that.
It was along similar lines.
Yeah, so basically, I think just in the nutshell, to say the condition of the tennis court paving is poor is probably an understatement. Basically, what happened is the prior resurfacing work that was done many years ago, Phil's my historian, he would probably know exactly when, basically was just done poorly. It was basically done resurfacing over resurfacing, which is typically not done. And basically the top layer is delaminating from the original court paving, meaning it's peeling off. There's two separate issues in the area. So one is basically the resurfacing of the tennis court without removing the underlying layer. The other thing, and if you kind of go out there and look, there's the old B&O water tank cistern, whatever you want to call it. It was clearly not filled properly whenever that was done. So you can almost see sort of a circle. So there's two separate issues, and we did look at both of them. So at this point, there have been no decisions made for any kind of redevelopment if that's where you all end up of the area. So the nature of my discussions with Clark Azar was sort of temporary fixes that would basically not cause problems down the road. So there's probably other options. These are the three that we mostly talked about. So certainly all the paving, dealing strictly with the tennis courts, the paving could all be removed, replaced with mulch. Basically, the problem with that is if we do go to redevelop the area and all the paving has been removed, from a permitting standpoint, what that is going to mean is that it would no longer be viewed by the Department of Permitting Services at the county as redevelopment. We would basically be viewed as doing full replacement of pervious surface with impervious, and that has consequences, specifically that full stormwater management would be required. So that is an option. It is not one that staff recommends or that Clark Azar recommends. Option two would be to kind of, I guess you could pick up some of the loose parts, but not really spend a lot of time trying to, pull off the top surface, basically seal coat it. Basically, it would prevent water from infiltrating into the cracks and heaving the pavement even more than it is. Essentially, we're gluing in place what's there, I guess, is a way of looking at it. Seal coating, it's so like you see it a lot, like when you're doing asphalt streets or your driveways are very common. So it would slow the deterioration of the paving. It would essentially like glue what's there in place. The surface would, however, remain very rough. So this has a cost of probably roughly three to $5,000. The third option was to remove the surface layer of the paving, leave the surface that's underneath. Obviously, the tennis court was resurfaced at some point, so theoretically, there's something wrong with the bottom of it, which I know George Miller is quite concerned about.
Yes.
What's underneath there? This would provide a smoother surface than, just seal coating it as is. Like option two, it would leave all the impervious area in place, so it would allow the site to be qualified as redevelopment by the county from a stormwater management standpoint. This would be a labor-intensive process, but probably could be done without a lot of specialized equipment. An option that I discussed with Jason is if we remove the top layer, should we seal coat what's left? He basically said that would buy the town more time, probably 3 to 5 years, depending on how long you think the decision-making process of what's going to happen there. So it would basically give us time to basically make some decisions about what we want to see happen in that area. And there's obviously different feelings about that in the community.
Hire somebody to do some planning about what we're gonna do there.
There is
Second-
in the
second
budget.
right there.
Yeah. So if we did pull up the top layer, not us personally, but probably hiring somebody, there may be some spot patching required before we could seal coat it because clearly they resurfaced the court for some reason. This would be a little bit more expensive. It does buy more time, so it's probably in the $6,000 to $8,000 range. As we just talked about, there is settlement in the old cistern. It's visible if you look in the area. That could be addressed as well. So this is the area, I think most of you have seen it. It's by the gate and it extends into the grassy area by the pool. It wasn't really clear to me whether the cistern settlement is of concern or it was just the court. So Jason and I did talk about it. If the settlement of the old cistern is of concern, that area could be milled with gravel. That would probably be about $2,000. What we would likely suggest if this is something that you want to do, out of all the options, we'd probably recommend option 3 just because I think it does buy the town more time to talk about things with the community. If this is something you want to go forward with, Jason Azar did give me the name of a small paving company that does a lot of work for Poolsville. We would reach out to them and basically get actual pricing because these are just guesstimates at this point.
One update, some Good Samaritan went out there and did a heck of a job filling those holes. They're as solid as they've been. Well, you're a regular dog parker. I don't know, but they're as solid as they've been in a long time. I don't know how they did it, but
Yeah.
so that is nice. Phil and I were talking earlier, and this has come up. I would posit there is another option to consider, which is the more more inexpensive and community-driven option, which is where we set a date and volunteers show up
Yeah.
and we chip away at. So the issue with that top layer is there's some areas where there's some areas where I can walk by and with my toe and my sneaker kind of kick
Yeah.
away a whole chunk and kick away another chunk, and pretty soon
Yeah.
I've kicked away 5 feet. There's some areas where it's not necessarily chippable. It's pretty solid. So we go out there one day and we chip what we can chip and we kind of clear as much as we can and we do it by hand. That's the free option.
Yeah, you probably need to get a dumpster. One option is if you wanted to organize some kind of community event and get the top layer up, you may then want to seal coat what's there
Sure.
just because it's going to continue to delaminate. That's inevitable with just the way the work was done years ago.
The crux of the feedback we got, the 2 bits feedback, and some of the feedback I've heard in person is a desire from some regular folks over there not to spend the money to do this, knowing we're going to be investing in full improvement projects.
Yeah, I think it depends how big of a concern it is. I know at least the communication I saw talked about when no one's tripped, I would say that your standard of risk management is not waiting for someone to fall. should not be anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, using the term tripping hazard doesn't mean that someone has fallen. It means there's the potential for someone to fall. But yeah, at this point, like I say, I think it's however you all wish to handle it. I don't have a strong sense of how much of a concern this is. Um,
I love the community option. I think that's great. Anything that gives us an opportunity to get together as a community, I think that's phenomenal.
Serve beer. Just
Um,
don't get burned.
Any,
yeah, you'd have to get a county permit.
any other points on that one before we move to the last one?
I-
Forgive me,
We
Geraldine.
do need to come to a clear decision though on the, whether we're,
should try the community.
advocating for, yeah.
Laminating and see how it goes, and after that, we can look and see what else we need to do.
I would say also if we can get a hold of the people just to give us an idea as to what the seal coat might cost, because I do agree. I've seen a lot of crazing and stuff occurring, and I think that if we're gonna do all that work, pick that stuff out of there, then we should probably seal it. And realistically, I mean, it's gonna be maybe 2 years, 3 years before we've got shovels in the ground and so
Right.
forth, and we've actually got work done. And a lot of people have complained. I mean, I looked at the comments from the survey from a while ago, and ugly dog park, it's unsafe, it's horrible, it's this, it's that. And everybody complains about the condition. And if we could do this for a reasonable fee, have it be community sweat equity, but if we could do that, it would make it look nicer, it would be safer. And, it would, again, buy us some time with less worry of people tripping over things or dogs eating the asphalt or whatever.
Yeah, so I went to the park earlier today and I did see the ad hoc work from a town resident, and that's all good and fine, but I would think that we should at least consider a proper fix on that, right? I know, yeah, there are 3 holes, they were filled with some sort of debris, but fine. But honestly, I don't think that's the fix that we need right now. And are we contemplating postponing the cistern work after the consultant provides their work product, or are we tabling that as well?
You mean the full effort to address the cistern?
Right. So, I mean, from my perspective, there are like 3 issues with the
Right.
park, right? You have that cistern that is depressed. You have
Yeah.
those 3 very large holes, and then
Yeah.
you have just dilapidated court everywhere.
Yes.
So it's essentially 3 decision points, or is it 2 here?
My take on that would be the full cistern, addressing of the cistern takes place during the whatever project takes place on the full improvement.
Right.
I have wondered if it's a matter of just cementing over the holes would be a temporary fix, but it doesn't sound like, I don't know if we heard from Jason over that.
He talked about gravel. Like I say, I think most of the discussion, someone had used the term, as we were talking about this with me, holes. And so I didn't know if holes meant, the alligator cracking and things happening on the tennis court, or people were considering where the cistern is settling as holes.
No, like there's actual holes.
We've
Yeah.
got holes.
Yeah. If you wanted us to get pricing for seal coating, probably the same type of company could do it with gravel. Yeah, so the cistern would probably just be putting gravel in to provide a little bit more of a solid surface instead of where everything is depressed. What I understand you want to do on the court is just have a volunteer effort, and possibly Phil's suggestion was to get pricing to seal coat once that work is completed. Is that right, Phil?
Right.
Okay.
But has Jason at any point viewed the holes?
Yes,
And
he did a site inspection back in March. He was out here for a different reason, and I asked him to run by there. It was shortly after the Parks Advisory Committee had made its presentation. So yeah, he visited it with George, and they walked the area.
I mean, Eric, because you've been part of those discussions. What do you think? Like, is the appetite for kind of letting fill the holes as best we can, as has been done, and kind of let that be until the full-blown project? Or
I mean, been a lot of feedback from the town. We've met with, when I was part of the Parks Committee, we met with many members of the town on site here, and there was a pretty clear message that there is a safety concern because of at least those holes. So I think if we don't do something, that would be a little
Negligent.
contradictory and kind of a waste of time if we don't do something.
So it sounds like more detail on filling. For our filling
Maybe after
message.
you take all the coating off, you can then look at what needs to be filled and then sealed.
Yeah.
But Eric, are you comfortable with a volunteer activity to see how far we can get before we bring in professional support? Or are you thinking we'd be better off just going ahead and spending the 6 to 8,000 and get a professional job done?
I'll defer to what the group would prefer there, but I haven't seen a volunteer effort of that kind in other towns or spaces. I mean, happy to hear other people's experiences, but it sounds a little odd. Yeah.
Maybe we give it a go. We see what it looks like afterwards.
Right.
But I agree with you that it's funny, when this came up, I wasn't even really thinking about the court itself. All along, I've been thinking about those holes. That was,
Yeah.
when they were like explore interim options to remediate the court, that's what I had in mind. How do we just like seal off these things? So nothing or no one falls.
With gravel.
So I think we shouldn't stand by and do nothing. We should
Right.
either encourage the volunteer effort, or we should just bite the bullet. 6 to 8,000 for option 2. Isn't
Three.
that
Three.
much, or 3, I'm
Option
sorry.
3.
Is it 3? Well, I think it was 2 was, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, 2 is 3 to 5, 6 to 8.
I think
In the
this
scheme of
three,
things,
you remove that top layer and you're not looking, it's aesthetic.
We don't know what
doesn't
it's
look any
underneath
better, and the
it.
condition is sort of just as bad.
Mhm.
But you're sealing.
Right.
But we're trying to get something that will last us 2 years while we do the planning process and keep
Right.
us safe from that fall.
I would not do the cistern area, the area that's sinking until we do a full development.
No,
of
that's
the
not,
site.
yeah, that's not being,
So that try the community effort and then fill the hole with gravel and seal it. Or hire a company to delaminate it, seal it, and fill the holes with gravel. One or the other. We could try the volunteer effort, and if that's not successful, we can always hire.
Well, the volunteer effort, let's say the volunteer effort clears 60% of that layer, it may be cheaper to bring a company in to remove the other. Whether it's not 100, who knows?
You have to
It's a
think
mess.
about what you're gonna do with this stuff once you take it away. You're gonna put it in bags and take it to the dump or what?
I hope a dumpster could be made.
Bring a
available.
dumpster in.
Yeah.
Dumpster.
the option 3, forgive me, the option 3 is to remove being what our community event would do. We would pay someone 6 to 8,000, they would remove it and then seal coat it. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
Right.
It's getting filled with gravel before it's sealed. There's some big holes that are dangerous.
There would be something better.
That's
than
not part of
gravel.
option 3, though. It's
No.
separate.
Put it in whatever.
My inclination here, and Chris, I'll defer to you, but I think that the disposal of the actual pieces is now what I'm thinking about. We could have a very enthusiastic group of folks come to volunteer, and now we have a big pile that we have to dispose of anyway. I think, although I'm sensitive to the cost, I'm also sensitive to the safety concerns, and I'm also sensitive to the timing of this. And so, again, this is, your liaison for this, and I'll defer to your recommendation. But I think that, anything that we kind of contemplate, I agree with you, could be done kind of in the near term, just to address those issues the best we can. And we have, to Lisa's point, we have allocated 50,000. That would be subsumed within that category, that 68,000. Barb, am I right about that?
I would say that I would probably charge it someplace else because that money is really to do any survey work So we'd probably look to pull it from a contingency account.
Any decisions that need to be made tonight on this particular issue?
Well, do we want to endorse an option just to get things moving?
Yeah, I think especially if there's something you want staff to follow up on, having definitive direction about what you want us to get pricing for would be very helpful.
Yeah.
So let me entertain the three options and I'll just get council's direction on where we want. All in favor of option 1? All in favor of option 2? All in favor of option 3?
Wait, is,
Additional filling the holes with gravel.
Option 3 with an asterisk.
Yeah.
well, what, option 3 is paying someone as opposed to doing community.
Or option 4 is the community, but then disposal of it.
Well, you get a dumpster. I mean.
Do we have to decide this tonight? I think that this, I don't know
No,
if we're at the
You
point.
do not have to decide it
Okay.
tonight. I think there was just appeared to be some interest in staff bringing back something sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
It is obviously late if you all want to continue this discussion
I
at
mean,
your
if we
next
have a
meeting.
Consensus, I want to pursue that. but I'm
Right.
getting the sense from people that there isn't.
Well, isn't there a consensus that like there's a fourth option?
The fourth option would be the community
Yeah.
event, but then how we incorporate the disposal.
Well, Barb said that the
Oh.
maintenance could provide a dumpster.
We would rent a dumpster and have it hauled away. That's
What would be the community option? Anyone?
What we could do is entertain and go for option 4. And if it isn't fully formed and looking like a go by next month, we could then take a vote and consider revisit for option 3 to just pay to have it done.
I agree, but I think the laminate topping should include filling the big holes with gravel. And that's not.
Something. No, it's in its spot.
Listed separately.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's spot checking could be an additional cost.
Yeah, so just to be clear, we're strictly talking about the court here. If there's a desire to do anything with the cistern, that's a different price. That's not included. Right. That's what I'm hearing, that leave the cistern
That's
alone.
Right. The cistern is under the court, and so there is a part of the court that's affected by the cistern.
Right.
Correct.
So all in favor of option 4, to Jerry Lee's point, if we feel that we pursue that and it doesn't, and it falls flat, then we can revert perhaps to another
Oh.
option. But for now, Phil, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I wanted to make an amendment because I thought we had talked about having them seal coated after we get done stripping off the stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that would be included.
Right. It's starting with option 4, and then we check progress and see what we need to do next month.
The reason I asked that was because I would then say, I would ask staff to get an estimate for the seal coat, assuming we stripped it, or an estimate for the whole thing, assuming we did nothing.
Right. And the thing is,
3 to 5,000.
right,
It's
because
up.
if you do the seal coat and the dumpster, how much further is it to just go ahead and pay for the whole thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a valid question. I mean, it can take some effort to organize a volunteer thing. So I think that's really a question for you all to decide. We could go ahead and get actual pricing and try to get some permutations of that. I think the big unknown for any company right now is not knowing how much spot patching is going to be done until the stuff is up.
I cannot imagine seal coating it in its current state would work.
No,
I don't know a lot about seal coat, but I just cannot imagine that would.
No.
correct.
It's take the top layer off and then seal coat it so that we don't have the top layer.
Submitted to do that for trying to do a community effort.
So the lights go off at 11. So we have to squeeze this in. Are we all in favor of option 4 to pursue that at this point? All in favor?
Option 4 is community
Yeah.
effort. Give it a shot.
Community effort, give it a shot, and if it doesn't progress the way we want.
Then we'll get a bid.
But you need the bid for filling the
Filling the holes.
Yes.
Sealing it.
Okay.
And we need the bid to fill the holes and see.
The clock's ticking as of right now.
The date for the community.
Yeah, because it hasn't happened by the next meeting.
It should be in June. Yeah.
Jerry Lee, Do you want to take us home?
Oh, is there an arboretum?
Arboretum update, or you can defer. Because the lights go out at 11. That's
Just very
all we paid
quickly,
for.
2027 is the 50th anniversary of the Arboretum. And so the Arboretum Committee is going to set up a subcommittee to work with the Archives Committee to plan a year of celebrations. So more to come.
Wow.
That's amazing. Okay, any other thoughts? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Yeah.
Second,
Yeah.
Yep.
we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.